I'm remarrying a new wife. You're no longer needed." Following that, my mother-in-law added, "Useless ones should just get divorced and leave." Uttering such harsh words, my father-in-law joined in, realizing the situation. He yelled, "A wife who can't have kids doesn't belong in our family. Just divorce Ryan and let him marry Agnes." Silently standing there, I was speechless. It was the first time in my life I felt so utterly miserable. But at the same time, a firm resolve solidified within me. The time had come for me to fight back. Seeing my expression, everyone but my sister-in-law froze in shock. They probably thought I'd be hurt and on the verge of tears. Defying their expectations, I smiled broadly and said, "I'm already divorced, you know, and that woman." At my words, my parents-in-law and Ryan gasped in disbelief. Uttering pitiful voices, they trembled as they faced this astonishing truth. My name is Margaret, a 31-year-old part-time housewife. I married Ryan 3 years ago, but we don't have any children yet. At 28, when we got married, I was a full-time employee poised for a promising career path. If I continued working, I wanted to build my career until I was 30 and then, once childbirth and parenting had settled, return to a job-friendly environment. Ryan understood this, and we agreed to start trying for a baby after I turned 30. When the time came, having seen a friend struggle with infertility, I decided to get tested just in case. The result revealed my infertility, leading me to switch to part-time work to focus on treatment. Ryan worked in a real estate company, and his take-home pay was more than enough for the two of us. Since we could save a little every month, Ryan was okay with me switching to part-time work. But that's when my nightmare began. Once he knew about my infertility and my change to part-time, Ryan's attitude completely shifted. He had been kind before, but suddenly he said, "I'm a full-timer, you're part-time, so you should take care of all the household chores. Without my income, we can't even afford infertility treatments, let alone live comfortably. To avoid stressing me out, you need to handle all the housework perfectly." I was good at housework since my days living alone, so it wasn't too painful at first. But Ryan started nitpicking over everything. If the room was even slightly messy, he'd yell, "You're lazy. How can a housewife live in such filth?" And if the dishes weren't washed right after a meal, he'd say, "A woman who procrastinates like this isn't cut out for family life. Go work more, earn your keep. There's remote work and stuff, right? You could find something. But remember, all the housework is still your responsibility. You're part-time, I'm full-time." At this time, I was still reeling from the shock of my infertility, thinking it was all my fault. I wanted to create a relaxing environment at home for Ryan, who was tired from work, so I tried to meet his expectations. Looking back, I realized I was just giving in to him, telling myself it was just patience until we have a child. I hoped that once we had a child, Ryan would return to his kinder self. Clinging to this hope, I continued juggling part-time work, housework, and infertility treatments. But the strain took its toll. I fell ill, the treatments weren't going well, and our relationship worsened. Gradually, I couldn't keep up with the housework and became more emotional. You can't even get pregnant and still act all high and mighty. "If you don't want a divorce, listen to me," he said, looking down on me. From then on, even a simple request to put his socks in the laundry basket was met with a shout of, "Shut up." I was just trying to make a point, but his contempt made me feel miserable and unsure of what to do next. He started treating me not as a wife but as a convenient woman or a servant. My spirit withered under this treatment. A year passed in this way without a child, and the gap between us remained. This year since becoming part-time and starting the treatment seemed to fly by. It was the most difficult time of my life. However, recently there's been a change. Ryan suddenly became kind, not just a little but a significant shift. It was as if he was a different person, showing increased concern for me. For instance, when infertility treatments weren't going well, and I was feeling down, Ryan asked, "You okay? How about I make dinner tonight? I'll whip up your favorite beef stew." It was a mix of happiness and suspicion. After looking down on me so much, this sudden kindness felt like he had a hidden agenda, making me doubtful. So I casually asked Ryan, "What's up? Anything good happened recently?" He relaxed and said, "Yeah, work's going great. I had us selected for a big project, but I might be away from home more as I need to have more meetings with the team." Up to this point, it was fine. My physical burden lessened, and Ryan's career success meant a secure future. Accepting his kindness without suspicion would mean no trouble. But there was one thing bothering me. Recently, Ryan had been overly curious about my activities. I asked him, "What's up with you lately? You used to be so uninterested in what I was doing." Suddenly, he snapped, "What's wrong with wanting to know about my wife's activities, Margaret? Are you doing something behind my back that you can't tell me?" His reaction seemed odd to me. Maybe he was being nice to cover up something he couldn't tell me. A recently divorced friend had told me about her husband becoming nice just before she discovered his affair. So I started suspecting Ryan's infidelity and began observing his movements. While he kept track of my schedule, I noticed a pattern. Ryan regularly went out for drinks on Tuesdays and played golf on the second Sunday of every month. He'd answer normally about other days, but on those specific days, if I asked where he went, he'd get angry, saying, "Damn it, stop nagging me, you're so annoying." It was suspicious. I grew more convinced Ryan might be cheating and decided to take serious action. A few weeks later, needing a break from this covert battle, I went on a little trip. It was a 20-minute drive from home to a cafe that had recently opened and caught my interest. Despite hearing about long lines, I didn't mind waiting alone, so I went there and waited for my turn. That's when I bumped into my sister-in-law. She's a 29-year-old cheerful and kind daycare worker, 2 years younger than me. She always looked up to me like a real sister, and I adored her like my own sibling. When I greeted her, my sister-in-law was startled and looked me up and down in a way she never did. Confused by her strange behavior, I tilted my head. "What's wrong?" Snapped out of it, my sister-in-law blinked, and after a moment of silence, she brightened up and said, "Margaret, let's have lunch together." So we changed the number of people on the reservation and sat together after waiting for several minutes. During lunch, my sister-in-law told me an unbelievable fact that left me speechless and unable to eat. After lunch, instead of going home as planned, I decided to change my plans. I decided to visit my parents-in-law's house with my sister-in-law. Their house is about a 30-minute drive from our apartment, where I currently live, so I don't usually stop by. My parents-in-law aren't exactly fond of me, so I don't see them often, only during the holidays or for memorial services. This would be a rare visit. It was just a little over 10 minutes from the cafe. My sister-in-law, who lives alone and only occasionally visits home, usually informs my mother-in-law when she's coming. But today we decided to go there without notice. It's the second Sunday of the month. Ryan should be at his usual business golf, but strangely, when we arrived at my parents-in-law's house, his car was there. My sister-in-law unlocked the door, and as we entered, I whispered a small hello. My mother-in-law came out and asked with a puzzled look, "What's Margaret doing here?" Her tone was clearly unpleasant just because I visited. She took this attitude simply because a daughter-in-law dropped by the house. I barely managed to hold back a sigh. Then, from the back of the house, I heard voices. Ryan and a woman appeared. Ryan looked shocked for a moment, but the woman cheerfully said, "Nice to meet you. I'm Agnes, the future wife of Ryan." As I stood there dumbfounded, my sister-in-law, with an angry expression, confronted them. "Hey, what's going on here? Explain this." Ryan sighed deeply, then looking down on me, he said something shocking. "I'm remarrying a new wife. You're no longer needed." Following that, my mother-in-law added, "Useless ones should just get divorced and leave," uttering such harsh words. Oddly, I was the only one who remained calm and rational, in contrast to my trembling sister-in-law who seemed both angry and sad. Meanwhile, Ryan, Agnes, and my mother-in-law looked down on me without any sign of remorse. Then my father-in-law, hearing the commotion, came in and quickly understood the situation. He yelled, "A wife who can't have kids doesn't belong in our family. Just divorce Ryan and let him marry Agnes." "Dad," my sister-in-law shouted, trying to stop him, but I slowly raised my head. It was time for my counterattack. Seeing my expression, everyone but my sister-in-law froze. They probably thought I'd be hurt and on the verge of tears, but defying their expectations, I smiled broadly and said, "I'm already divorced, you know." My parents-in-law and Ryan were astonished. They could only utter a pathetic "ha" in response. I had the urge to reveal Agnes's true identity right then and there, but instead, I sighed and said, "Ryan, do you remember the recent fuss you made about divorcing me? You even filled out the divorce papers. Those papers were signed by you, so I filled in my part, submitted them, and consulted a lawyer. Whether you realize it or not, we're already divorced. We're not a couple anymore." Ryan seemed to recall that incident and lost his previously composed demeanor. His eyes darted around, clearly showing his agitation. A few days ago, Ryan and I had an argument, and in a fit of rage, he signed the divorce papers and threatened me. The argument was over something trivial. I had simply asked him again where he goes every second Sunday. It was time to get to the heart of the matter. Ryan, red-faced, yelled, "You're always asking such things. Do you want to tie me down?" "I'm not having it." It was his usual angry outburst. I pointed out that it was strange for him to get so worked up just because I asked about his whereabouts on the second Sunday. Still, Ryan kept nagging and stormed out of the house. Later, he came back with the divorce papers, filled his part out hastily, and pushed them at me, saying, "I can divorce you anytime." When I asked if he really intended to divorce, Ryan nodded firmly, so I secretly filled in my part and kept the papers in my bag, ready to submit at any time. They were like a talisman, a magical paper that could end my marriage with Ryan if anything happened. Today, after a shocking conversation with my sister-in-law and reaching my limit, I stopped by the office to submit the papers before visiting my parents-in-law. Ryan, hearing this, said, "That was just a threat. I didn't mean it." But my sister-in-law retorted, "You signed it yourself, saying you could divorce anytime. That clearly shows your intent." Ryan fell silent again. I sarcastically said to Ryan, "So we're practically no longer a couple. Happy now?" He opened his mouth to say something, but before he could, my mother-in-law interjected with a smug look, "Oh, is that so? Well, divorcing you was always the plan, so that's fine, isn't it?" My father-in-law seemed to agree with her, nodding his head. From their perspective, my divorce from Ryan was inevitable sooner or later, so they thought, why not now? Their true feelings were evident, suggesting that the divorce was a positive outcome for Ryan anyway. Standing next to Ryan, Agnes was also just smirking annoyingly. Noticing this, Ryan chuckled slightly and said, "Yeah, that's right. Our divorce is the first step towards me being with Agnes." It was a skin-crawling statement. Our younger sister-in-law looked embarrassed by this scene, maybe ashamed of these four. For me, holding back laughter at this foolish family and Agnes was a challenge, ignoring their triumphant looks. I operated my smartphone and showed them a photo. It was clear evidence of Ryan and Agnes's affair, pinpointing the place and time in just one shot. "I didn't file for divorce on a whim," I told Ryan. "I've gathered all the evidence of your affair from the start." Seeing him gulp at my words, I glanced at him as Agnes suddenly burst into laughter. Frowning, I looked at Agnes as she blurted out, "So you've thoroughly investigated me too? That woman you almost mentioned, I guess you figured her out. Were you going to reveal that she's pregnant? Too bad. Ryan and his parents know it and deliberately let me stay here." Hearing this, our sister-in-law was shocked. She had been told by Ryan and their parents that we were divorced when we met at the cafe. The reason for the divorce was particularly shocking. They said I was terminally ill with little time left and that I initiated the breakup. They seemed tearful and surprised by my sudden appearance at the cafe. My sister-in-law thought she was hallucinating, hence her strange behavior, which she apologized for. Hearing their story, I was appalled. Ryan had lied about separating from his wife due to a made-up illness. He told his sister, "Margaret is now despairing in life, so please don't contact her and accidentally upset her." Believing this, my sister-in-law refrained from reaching out to me. However, upon returning home, she was surprised to find a strange woman living there whom my parents-in-law introduced as Ryan's new wife. Until now, my sister-in-law realized she had been deceived, but she was hearing for the first time about Agnes's pregnancy. In response to Agnes's smug attitude, I burst out laughing. After my laughter subsided, I spoke to a stunned Agnes. "Of course, I knew you were pregnant. My detective had already clued me in, but I figured Ryan and his parents living here with you must know too. So I brought something even more interesting," I said, and the atmosphere immediately tensed. Everyone held their breath in a hushed silence, wondering what revelation was coming next. Agnes looked at me anxiously, waiting for me to speak. When I finally did speak, the quiet was shattered and the situation took a drastic turn. What I wanted to say is, the child you're pregnant with, Agnes, it's not Ryan's. It's from another man. Immediately, sweat formed on Agnes's forehead, and her expression became rigid. Ryan, speechless, could only mutter, "What?" His parents, confused, slowly turned their gaze towards Agnes. Before our marriage, I had spent my savings on a detective, asking them to gather conclusive evidence and information that would be advantageous for me post-divorce. Normally, it would have been just providing photographic evidence, but I requested several extras. I wanted photos that clearly showed the date and time, and detailed investigative reports recorded at every step. In fact, I had already gathered enough evidence to confront Ryan and demand alimony on the day of the divorce petition. I knew why he only went out on Tuesdays and the second Sunday of every month. Those were Agnes's days off at her job. Ryan dug his own grave by writing the divorce papers himself, handing me an unexpected win. I had enough evidence to corner Ryan, but I thought it was too early. The detective had mentioned a dark shadow lingering around Agnes, so I asked for a more detailed investigation into her. It turned out she was indeed pregnant, and Ryan knew about it. This was somewhat expected. However, Agnes insisted on going to the doctor alone, stubbornly refusing to bring Ryan along. He seemed indifferent, but Agnes had a clear intention: to keep her other boyfriend, a married man with kids, from suspecting anything. It turns out the child is definitely his. This married man, unable to be with Agnes due to his family, agreed to cover all costs for prenatal care to childbirth and even pay a lump sum in child support to end their affair. The agreement was that once the baby was born and if a test confirmed it was his child, he would pay child support and settle their relationship. That's why that man always accompanied Agnes to the hospital, leaving no room for Ryan to get involved. Ryan, used to me attending fertility clinic appointments alone, didn't suspect anything different. I had collected evidence of Agnes going into the clinic with another man and even had decisive audio data, all stored on my smartphone. I presented all this evidence right there. Agnes's face gradually turned pale, and her hands trembled slightly. Ryan, filled with anger, confronted Agnes, yelling, "Did you deceive me?" His parents were doing the same. I thought it was too much to gain up on a pregnant woman, so I intervened. "Enough. You're all embarrassing. You're all just as bad." Ryan, who cheated, his parents, who condoned it, and Agnes planning to divorce Ryan and raise another married man's child. All of you are behaving disgracefully. This is nothing but a low-level quarrel. After my outburst, everyone fell silent, unable to respond. There was no turning back now. I was resolved. Knowing Agnes's shocking secret, these people were unlikely to live together anymore. But I couldn't forgive Ryan for looking down on me while I was struggling with infertility treatments and then pretending to be kind to avoid suspicion after his affair. I've divorced Ryan, and I'm going to make sure you all pay for your sins. Agnes, you now have to raise 2 children alone, but you brought this upon yourself. So face the consequences. When I said this casually, Agnes turned even paler. "You knew I had another child?" "How? Where did you?" she stammered, unable to finish her sentence. Ryan and his parents furrowed their brows even deeper as I started explaining. For clarity, Agnes is a single mother, but her older child is being raised by her parents. They give her some money, but with another child coming, things will change. Her parents are getting older, and she's been looking for a man to act as an ATM to help with childcare. I have evidence of her laughing about this with friends. Realizing that the term ATM was a veiled reference to himself, Ryan looked hurt, though he had no right to feel that way. His parents were flustered, and his mother, losing her earlier composure, said in a panic, "So Agnes's child isn't our grandchild? Then there's no reason for her to stay in this house. Leave right now." Agnes, in her desperation, started making excuses. "No, it is Ryan's child. Please believe me." But my sister-in-law, who had been silent, finally spoke up. "Now you think we'll believe that, Agnes? Don't you realize the mess you've made of people's lives?" Agnes fell silent at her sharp words. Then my sister-in-law dropped another bombshell. "Aren't you the mom of the boy who goes to our nursery? The one always dropped off by his elderly grandparents. His name wouldn't happen to be Jason, would it?" Agnes's eyes widened, and though she opened her mouth to respond, no words came out. Her silence confirmed my sister-in-law's suspicions. Shocked, my mother-in-law collapsed on the spot while my father-in-law looked between us, frantic. It was time to wrap things up. I presented Ryan with an ultrasound photo and said, "Thanks to fertility treatments, I'm pregnant with your child. I was going to tell you soon. But then the morning sickness got worse and your affair became certain. But make no mistake, this child is yours. We won't live together, but I expect you to pay child support in full." Ryan looked despairing, but his brazen mother raised her head and started, "If you're having a child, you're still fit to be his wife. We were just misled by this woman. Apologize, and Margaret, please stay." I ignored my mother-in-law and turned to leave. When she kept calling after me, I turned back just once. "What are you doing?" You never liked me from the start. When you found out Agnes was pregnant with Ryan's child, what did you do? Your audacity knows no bounds. Stunned by my retort, something I'd never done before, my mother-in-law looked down again. My father-in-law, perhaps realizing their folly, said nothing more. I had already decided I didn't need to be recognized as their daughter-in-law, especially since they had discarded me. As I stepped outside, our sister-in-law apologized repeatedly, asking if there was anything she could do. I replied, just make sure they don't flee. I'm going to keep my distance from Ryan and communicate through a lawyer. And from now on, let's keep in touch as friends. She looked surprised but then nodded, saying, let's get through this together. Later, I hired a lawyer and went through the division of property. They whined about not being able to pay the substantial amount. But when I said I'd pursue this to the end in court with no mercy, they reluctantly agreed. As for Agnes, her affair with the married man came to light, leading to a heated argument. The turmoil grew too large, eventually reaching his wife's ears, and things did not end smoothly. Agnes, in desperation, turned to her parents for help. Naturally, they were furious with her and dragged her to us to apologize. After giving birth, Agnes will have no choice but to work tirelessly from dawn to dusk, unlikely to ever have the chance to engage in infidelity again. Despite having children, Agnes had been irresponsibly carefree, but now her parents control all her earnings, leaving her no room for stress relief. Having lived selfishly until now, she should start living for her children. Meanwhile, Ryan's fate turned out to be a mess as well. He eventually had to sell his family home to raise child support. Now he's living in a cramped, rundown apartment with his parents, barely getting by. I initially agreed to let him pay child support in installments, but as expected, he fell behind, thinking he could get away with it, probably based on something he read online. He was mistaken. I had warned I would be relentless. I immediately took legal action, enforcing payment through the courts. This led to his employer finding out about the divorce and his child support delinquency. His previous actions of leaving work early under the pretense of supporting his wife's fertility treatment, only to spend time with Agnes, also came to light, subjecting him to scorn. Eventually, he quit his job and paid the child support in full with a loan, plunging him into a lifetime of debt. Ryan's parents, too, were caught in the fallout. Now Ryan works solely to pay off his debts, and his parents, unable to enjoy a comfortable retirement, had to return to work. Their daily irresponsible arguments, blaming each other, even led to the police being called for being a neighborhood nuisance. Now they're quietly working to manage their debt, complaining as they do. As for me, I went back to my parents' house, apologized, and decided to live with them for a while after the birth. With their support, things started to look up. Soon, my former employer offered me a full-time position again. My sister-in-law, working at the daycare, agreed to take care of my daughter, giving me some peace of mind. Now, as a single mother living independently from my parents, I'm managing well. Thanks to the support and kind words from those around me, I've resolved to cherish these invaluable relationships and raise my daughter to be a wonderful person.
That worthless wife. Just discard her before we land in real trouble. As soon as they assumed I was asleep, my husband and his mother underwent a complete shift in their attitudes. Initially leaving home under the pretext of safeguarding their assets, they shamelessly returned, unleashing chaos. When I confronted them with reality, my name is Daisy, 30 years old, engaged to Brad after a 5-year courtship, living with his parents, the true nature of my husband and his mother became evident. Despite our initial agreement to purchase our own house after having our first child, almost 2 years had passed, and we were still residing with his parents. In this extended stay with my husband, his mother, and his younger brother, concerns about me surfaced among those around us. My parents lived at a considerable distance, requiring air travel, expressing regret that they couldn't provide assistance. Despite this, my relationship with my husband and mother-in-law remained strong, seemingly immune to the typical conflicts between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. I was content until one day, an accident left me hospitalized with a broken bone. Initially, my husband and mother-in-law visited daily, displaying genuine concern. However, their visits dwindled to once a week, and their attitude took a drastic turn. Overhearing a conversation they thought I was oblivious to, my husband and mother-in-law expressed disappointment in me. The accident had rendered me unable to perform household chores or contribute financially. In their eyes, I transformed from a wife to a burden, with the idea of having children becoming even more distant. Their conversation continued, dismissing the purpose of our marriage, claiming that I was meant to serve as a maid and caregiver. Frustrated by the inconvenience, they discussed the possibility of divorcing me. Unbeknownst to them, I heard it all while pretending to be asleep. From that point on, their demeanor towards me grew increasingly cold. My husband's visits became sporadic, and my mother-in-law's comments were laced with disdain. The only solace came from my brother-in-law, who continued to assist me with daily tasks and offered emotional support during my hospitalization. Although physical therapy was challenging, my brother-in-law's presence helped me persevere. Despite my progress, when I shared news of potential lingering issues with my husband and mother-in-law, they argued over my fate, blaming me for their troubles. In reality, I had been caring for my father-in-law for 5 years, a responsibility I undertook while dating my husband. Why don't you live together since you are both going to get married anyway? Yeah, it's a great idea. We can save money by living together and then get married when we're settled. When I hesitated, they reassured me, it's okay. We have plenty of rooms and we won't invade your privacy. Plus, you don't need to pay rent. You want to marry my son, right? How could I refuse? But in return, we have a favor to ask, Daisy. While you're working from home, can you look after our father, who needs care? It's only for 4 to 5 hours during the day when my mother is out for her part-time job. We also have my brother, so the two of you can work together. My brother-in-law was also working from home, so Yi and I teamed up to take care of my father-in-law in the house. My father-in-law and brother-in-law were very close. My father-in-law had a hobby of collecting furniture and even had a separate house just for it. My brother-in-law and I always enjoyed hearing about his hobby. My father-in-law loved his caring son, Regan. Eventually, my father-in-law's health began to decline, and after years of care, he passed away. After that, my husband proposed to me, saying, "Thank you for always taking care of my father. Let's continue to be together. Let's get married." Despite having worked hard on housework and caregiving, the moment I became immobile, my husband and mother-in-law's attitude towards me became as if I were worthless. Even I, normally composed, was infuriated. "Force me, please pay what you're supposed to." "Well, I don't want any trouble, so I'll give you the house." "Let's waive the other division of property." I wondered if he would really give me the house, but since my father-in-law had left a substantial inheritance, it was divided among my mother-in-law, Brad, and Regan. The inheritance amounted to approximately $300,000 each, so he seemed to have enough assets. Regan was tasked with handling all paperwork with the executor and had to visit the court several times, which was quite a hassle. "No way, we can't give away the house. If we divide the property, I'll lose half my savings. It's just a wastefully large house in the countryside. Even if we give it away, it's not an issue. Even at the highest estimate, it's only worth about $100,000, plus various fees will be deducted when we sell it. It's cheaper than losing half my savings." "Well, if you say so, Brad. But what if she demands more later? What if rumors spread in the neighborhood because we abandoned her?" The two debated what to do with me. "Then I'll take her in," Regan, Brad's brother, interrupted. "Why would you go out of your way to do that?" "Ah, you've been interested in Daisy, haven't you? That's why you're so willing. You can have her if you want, but she's no longer of any use to us. Don't ask to take Daisy and the house back later, okay? Why would I? I just hope you won't come asking for money later. And remember, you can't return damaged goods." Brad and Regan signed papers and arranged to formally change the property title through a lawyer. "I'll take out some money for my savings, so why don't you find a younger, healthier, and prettier woman to marry and build a better house?" "Sounds good. Hey, Daisy, get a lawyer to file for our divorce quickly." They said they'd stay in a hotel for a while and left the room. Regan and I silently saw them off. I had to find a lawyer to file for our divorce first. Reagan helped me to file for the divorce, and in a few days, Brad and I became complete strangers. A week later, Brad and my mother-in-law packed their belongings and left the house. It seemed peculiar that Reagan, Brad's brother, continued to visit me after I divorced his brother. When I expressed concern about him worrying about his former sister-in-law, he responded, "I'm doing this because I want to. I didn't get along with you just because you were my brother's wife. We both provided care and did housework together. We've talked a lot more in these 7 years than you ever did with my brother. We're friends, aren't we?" Reagan said with a gentle smile. All I could do was express my thanks and gratitude. A month later, I was discharged from the hospital. Although I had to continue visiting for physical therapy, being back home after such a prolonged absence was a relief. I couldn't help but wonder, do you think those two will really ever come back? I'm worried they might return and make me work again. If they come back, I'll drive them away. I can't forgive them for treating you so horribly. Plus, they have no right to return to this house, Reagan reassured. Despite still being unable to move as before, Reagan took care of most household chores. Fortunately, as a freelancer working from home, I was able to return to work and contribute financially. Thanks to bi-weekly physical therapy, my recovery proceeded smoothly without complications. A year later, I was able to resume a normal life, collaborating with Reagan on housework. We spent more time together, using our days off for trips. Just as I thought our peaceful days would continue, a storm suddenly hit. One night, while Reagan and I were having dinner, the door was knocked, and the intercom rang repeatedly. When I nervously answered, Brad appeared on the monitor. "Hey, open up. This isn't your home anymore. State your business and leave," I firmly said as I opened the door, surprised by Brad's unexpected arrival. "What do you want? Why do I have to put up with such an attitude just for coming home?" Brad said, entering without hesitation. "I'll be living here again from today. Oh, I'm hungry. Hey, Daisy, give me some food," he ordered, disregarding the changed dynamics. "Cut it out. Why are you here?" I asked, bewildered. Brad explained. "Well, I've spent almost all my money. My mom will be here soon too, so leave the door unlocked." Remaining silent, I heard him say, "Oh, you're all healed up, huh? That's great. Let's get back together. You must have had a hard time without me," as he persisted in his mistaken belief. He approached me with a disgusting familiarity, and the sheer audacity of his actions made me feel sick. "Stop it. I divorced you, and I don't care about you anymore. Don't get cocky. You've been living on my money all this time, and you can't do anything but housework." "Just shut up and do as I say," Brad shouted at me. Just then, the door opened, and his mother arrived, criticizing the unlocked door as careless. "What's going on?" "She's been getting cheeky, so I was giving her a bit of education. She's grown thick-skinned in the year we've been away," Brad explained. Once again, Brad and his mother began to make themselves at home, acting as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I had had enough. "This isn't your home. I'm calling the police." "Oh yeah, about that. This house was originally in your father's name, right? So that means the heir, including my mother, makes our agreement null and void, doesn't it?" Brad shouted, making an unreasonable claim. "You promised to give me the house. If you're nullifying that, then everything about the division of property should be nullified as well. Give me half the savings." "Sure, but I don't have it anymore. Didn't I tell you earlier? I've squandered it all. I quit my job, spent it all on booze, fun investments, you name it," Brad admitted, shocking me with the unbelievable revelation. "I also have some debts with consumer finance, about $20,000. I guess you can pay for me," he continued. Initially, I thought he was lying, but his mother confirmed it. "I can't lend you that much money." "I'm not asking you to lend it. I'm telling you to pay it. I'm not giving you any money." "I'm calling the police," I declared. As Reagan dialed the police to report the situation, Brad began wreaking havoc in the house, breaking the precious furniture that had been my father-in-law's keepsake. His mother joined in, destroying the furniture and laughing as she did so, something so terrible that it tarnished the memory of my father. About 10 minutes later, when the police arrived, I explained the situation to them. "This is quite a mess. Let's hear your side of the story," one officer said. "What's wrong with me breaking things in my own house? That's right. We're just crushing things we don't need. What's the problem?" Brad argued, leaving the police unsure of how to respond. Reagan stepped in, clarifying that the house had never belonged to Brad and his mother. It was under my name. When the police seemed uncertain how to respond to this revelation, Regan explained that our father-in-law had left a will, and the house was mine from the beginning. Brad and his mother stood dumbfounded. "So this isn't your property then?" the police asked. "Hold on, but I'm her ex-husband. We're like family, so she'll forgive me, right?" Brad pleaded. "Don't make me laugh. You're a stranger. Once you're an ex, I don't even know you. You were in contact with another woman before our divorce was finalized and treated me like a maid. If not you, then who?" I retorted. No, that's not what happened. I was just going along with what my mom said. She ordered me to do all this," Brad claimed. His mother confirmed that Brad had been trying to marry a young woman after our divorce, according to her information. He also quit his job to start his own business, but it failed within just a month. Despite having money, Brad was rejected by lenders and became reckless, engaging in irresponsible behavior such as playing and gambling, claiming he had money to spare. He admitted to having almost no money left, and it seemed that his financial situation was indeed dire. "You brought this upon yourself. All this is Brad's fault," I asserted, despite their previous condescending attitudes towards me. They both desperately pleaded for forgiveness, attempting to shift the blame, but this was truly ridiculous. "No, I won't forgive either of you. And this isn't something from the past, is it? You were treating me like a servant until a moment ago. Not leaving when I asked you to leave is illegal. And since the furniture collected by my late father-in-law is now mine, you'll need to compensate me for that." But all right, we will compensate you. Just please don't get the police involved. You wouldn't want me to go to jail, would you?" they pleaded. Unmoved, I responded, "I actually don't care at all. By the way, we're married." It turned out I was married to my former brother-in-law, Reagan. It hasn't even been a year, and you've moved on to another man, my own brother at that. "What are you talking about? You moved on before you were even divorced, didn't you? You wouldn't return Daisy to me, no matter how many times I asked. Stop clinging to the past already." Brad was left speechless. "I don't care anymore. I'll pay for whatever damages there are. How much for my idiot husband's junk?" "Well, if we calculate roughly, about $100,000. The furniture that my father-in-law had collected was all high-end pieces made by famous designers," I explained. Brad and his mother, who had no interest in these items, seemed to have believed they were just junk. "You're going to compensate for what you've broken, right? We're not sure if we can get the same items, but make sure to pay properly." Unable to afford such compensation, Brad and his mother were distraught. For the time being, the police took the two of them away for trespassing and vandalism. Of course, I didn't forgive them and proceeded with the lawsuit. Afterwards, Brad and his mother, who were desperately seeking help from Regan, were bluntly rejected. Regan said, "I'm ashamed to even be related by blood." Brad and his mother were likely receiving their just desserts together. And there's one more thing I kept secret. My father-in-law told me to sell the house and use the money as I wish. Regan had told me that the price of the house was $100,000. But in reality, the document stated the value of the house was around $500,000. It's a good location, so it might sell for a bit more. But for now, Regan and I decided to take it easy in the house my father-in-law left us, with no plans to sell it. Eventually, we planned to sell the land and build a new house. I had some worries about having children, so after getting married to Regan, I went to the gynecologist for a checkup. But there were no issues with either Regan or me. Now, with the troublemakers gone, Regan and I are living happily together.
Hey there, I'm Valentina, and I've been thinking a lot about life lately. I'm big on being independent, thanks to my amazing dad who raised me that way. But things got a bit complicated recently when I had some issues with my not-so-friendly mother-in-law. Let me tell you how my husband Alan and I met. We were interns at the same marketing job when I was 24. We became good friends, and as you can guess, spending more time together made us fall deeply in love. So when we found out we were expecting a baby last year, we couldn't resist getting married. Some might think it was just because of the baby, but we genuinely wanted to make it official. It was a special moment, and the only person who knew beforehand was my best friend, Kara. When we told our parents, the reactions were different. My family isn't your typical Hispanic family. My father started with very little but built a successful company despite facing challenges as a person of color. He always encouraged my mom and me to break stereotypes and chase our dreams. Because of our unique background, my parents were totally fine with us eloping and getting married. They were genuinely happy for us, and when we shared the baby news, they were overjoyed. However, Alan's parents didn't seem as thrilled. They weren't as engaged or excited about our marriage like my parents were. A week after we shared the news, my parents came over to our apartment for dinner, bringing their blessings and excitement. We invited Alan's parents too, but they didn't show up. Fast forward to my second trimester, and Alan's parents finally decided to visit us while they were in town for a friend's wedding. We all had dinner together at our place, but it was awkward. I was really looking forward to getting to know them better since we're family now, right? During dinner, Alan's dad kept asking questions about my dad's company, which made me uncomfortable. Alan's mom, Elaine, seemed especially focused on me, and it was clear she wasn't on my side. She made sarcastic comments that made me realize winning her over wouldn't be easy. But I knew I had to try for Alan's sake, because family means everything to him. The dinner was a disaster, and Elaine made it clear she wasn't happy. But I did my best for Alan, even though it was tough. Life went on, and Alan stayed busy with his marketing job, but dealing with his parents, especially Elaine, wasn't easy. While I was taking time off due to my pregnancy, we were about midway through the third trimester when my best friend Kara suggested it was time for a baby shower. We loved the idea. Being someone who loves to go all out, I wanted it to be the most amazing baby shower ever. We decided to invite all our friends and, of course, both of our families who hadn't met each other yet. It seemed like the perfect chance to bring everyone together. Kara, who's great at event planning, found us a beautiful, spacious botanical garden venue since our apartment couldn't fit so many people. About a week before the big day, we sent out invitations to all our friends and family, and both of our families confirmed they'd be there to celebrate with us. Both sets of parents arrived in town the day before the baby shower, and I had an idea. I suggested that we take them out to dinner to get to know each other in a more private setting before the big event. I thought it would be a great way to help everyone feel more comfortable before the baby shower. But little did I know, this plan would completely dampen my mood for the upcoming celebration. We made dinner reservations, and my mom was the first to arrive. I'd asked her where Dad was, and she said he got caught up with something important. As we were catching up at the table, Alan's parents joined us. My mother-in-law greeted my mom with a cold smile, and you could feel the tension in the air. Then my mom got up and shook hands with my father-in-law. "It's nice to meet you, Mariana." "Ah, nice to meet you." "Oh, we once hired a maid for our house who had the same last name as you," my mother-in-law said. We all just looked at each other, thinking, did she really just say that? "Oh, really? That's an interesting coincidence. Anyway, let's order some drinks," my mom replied, trying to move on. "That's a great idea. Also, why isn't your dad here, Valentina?" Elaine asked, and just like that, her comment got swept under the rug. To be honest, I was fuming inside. How could she make such a thoughtless comment to my mom? It really got under my skin. I couldn't understand why Elaine would say something so hurtful and insulting, not just to me, but especially to my family. I tried to put myself in Elaine's shoes, wondering if maybe she had some reservations about me because Alan and I eloped without informing her. Maybe that was why she wasn't accepting of our relationship. But even then, that didn't excuse her rude behavior toward my mom. I felt terrible for my mom. I couldn't believe she had to sit through dinner with that hurtful comment hanging over her. It's one thing if Elaine didn't like me, but my mom didn't deserve any of that negativity. I tried my best to shift my focus away from the awkward encounter. The rest of the dinner was just small talk between the parents while Alan and I continued to chat about the baby and our excitement for the future. After dinner, when it was time for our parents to leave, I walked my mom out. While Alan was seeing his parents off, I felt the need to apologize to my mom for Elaine's behavior. "Mom, I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for being here. I'm sorry about what Elaine said. She hasn't exactly warmed up to me yet, but I'm hoping she'll come around eventually. It's okay, Maija. You're a wonderful girl, and I know you'll win her over in time. Your dad and I will see you tomorrow. Get home safe. Bye, Valentina." "Bye, love you." Tell Dad his presence was missed. The car ride home was just as awkward as the dinner. I was really hoping Alan would say something about his mom's behavior or at least explain it, but he didn't bring it up, and I was surprised. I decided not to confront him at that moment because I didn't want to ruin the baby shower. I figured I'd talk to him about it after the event, hoping we could sort things out then. So we got home, tried to sleep off the tension, and woke up to the big day. The baby shower. We reached the venue around noon, and Kara was already there, busy setting everything up with the workers. She was doing an amazing job, and the place looked incredible with balloons, confetti, flowers, decorations, glitter, and sparkles everywhere. Guests started arriving at 2, and Alan and I were on hosting duty, trying to make everyone feel welcome. But just as my parents showed up, Alan's parents walked in too, and I wasn't sure how to feel after the drama from the night before. I was still upset with Alan, but I kept my cool for the moment. Then, to my surprise, Elaine decided to break the ice. "Hello, Mariana. Hello, Manuel. Hey, it's nice to see you again. You know, I've been thinking about what happened yesterday, and I just wanted to say I'm sorry for my behavior. It was totally uncalled for. No worries, it's nothing we can't move past. Let's just move forward and enjoy today, okay? This is my husband, Manuel. Manuel, meet Elaine. It's nice to finally meet you in person, Manuel," Elaine said. "Likewise, Elaine. And oh, Mr. Herrera, this is my husband, William. Actually, William knows all about your company. Back in the day, you were quite the talk when you were up and coming. Nice, I know your husband too." "The world is so small," my dad responded. "Ah, what? You know my husband, William? Have you guys met before?" Elaine asked, surprised. What just happened? It turns out that not only was Elaine caught off guard, but all of us were totally shocked to find out that William and my dad already knew each other. "You've got to be kidding, right? How do you know him?" I asked. "Well, he works with me." "Wait, hold on, none of us knew this. Dad, you have some explaining to do. Fill us in, please." "He manages my $50 million portfolio," my dad admitted. "What about that job with Christopher? Weren't you managing for him, William?" Elaine questioned. "Couldn't we just talk about this when we get home?" William replied. "Dad, why didn't you tell us about this before? You've been keeping this a secret from us?" I asked, still trying to understand what was going on. "Yeah, how did this even start?" Alan added. "It's not like that. It just never came up. Let's not make a big deal of it, okay? You have guests waiting," my dad said, trying to move on. Wow, what a whirlwind of a day it had been. The revelation that William and my dad knew each other took us all by surprise, and it just got swept under the rug during the baby shower. But honestly, I couldn't stop thinking about it. My father-in-law had been working for my dad. Why didn't William mention it last night when Alan brought up my dad at dinner? And did my dad already know him before hiring him? So many questions were swirling in my head. Despite the lingering mystery, the baby shower went well, but that topic was like an elephant in the room. Alan and I could no longer ignore it. He even told me that we needed to talk about it because he had no idea either. After the party wrapped up and we got home, we both decided to make those calls, individually of course. Alan called his dad and I called mine. We retreated to separate rooms and made our respective calls to our family members. We agreed that after talking, we'd compare notes and figure out the truth. "Hey, Dad. Maija, you should be resting. Today was a long day and the baby's due soon." "I know, Dad, but I just wanted to talk to you about something first. How long has my father-in-law been working for you?" "For about a month now. I didn't realize he was your father-in-law when I hired him. It was just a coincidence. I mean, how could I possibly know? He had just been fired by his management team. and I gave the poor guy a chance. He knew all about you though. A couple of months ago, when I met him and Elaine for the first time, he couldn't stop praising you and your company. It's just strange that he never mentioned me to you, don't you think? I asked, still puzzled. You know, people have their own ways of doing things, and sometimes they keep certain things to themselves. Maybe he had his reasons, my dad replied, trying to ease my concerns. I guess so, but it's still a bit odd. Get some rest and take care of yourself, Maija. Don't let this stuff keep you up at night. Good night. Okay, good night, Dad. I finished my call with my dad and was making my way to Alan's room to fill him in when I overheard him on the phone. He sounded pretty upset, so I tried to eavesdrop. Okay, Mom, what if Dad works for Valentina's dad? You're so obsessed with what people think, and you don't have to act superior all the time. Maybe that's why Dad kept this from you. He knew you'd make his life hell if you found out. I tried to let go of that Mariana incident, but you really went overboard, Mom. Insulting people won't make you better than them. I love Valentina, and I won't defend you again on this. Just get over it and accept her. Maybe apologize to her. Yeah, okay, bye. Once Alan was done, I played it cool, pretending I didn't hear a thing. We exchanged stories about our conversations with our respective parents, and I was completely honest, as was Alan. He addressed his dad's job situation. His dad had been in a tough spot, going through a rough patch after getting fired. William lucked out and got selected for my dad's job that he had posted about. He didn't mention it to Elaine and the rest of the family, knowing she'd flip out. She wouldn't want William working for Manuel, because she wouldn't want her family to be in any way dependent on her son's wife's family. Her ego got in the way. I have to say that I admire Alan's dedication to making things work between us and his mom. He meant the world to me and wanted her to rethink her stance and apologize for her problematic comments. Despite her past antics, I was willing to give her another shot for Alan's sake. He said she just needed some time. A whole month passed and the baby was ready to make her grand entrance. Luckily, Alan was there when my water broke, and he rushed me to the hospital. We were blessed with a little girl, and we named her Catalina. She was just the cutest when I first saw her. Once we got home, our friends couldn't wait to meet our little baby girl. My parents caught a flight the very next day. Kara was all pumped up because now she had a niece to play dress-up with. Alan reached out to his mom and shared the news of our daughter's arrival. Even after weeks of not speaking to her, she didn't visit us for a whole week. But then, out of the blue, she called Alan and asked if she could make arrangements for my parents to visit so she could apologize and start anew with our family. I called my folks and asked if they could drop by for a day, and they were totally up for it. We were over the moon, feeling super strong as a couple and soaking up all the happiness. The big day finally arrived and Alan and I prepared some mouth-watering dishes to celebrate with everyone. Catalina was the star of the show, bringing our families together. Soon enough, everyone had gathered. My mom surprised me with the sweetest gift, a matching baby blanket and a pastel pink mummy scarf made out of soft wool that she had knitted herself. It was so thoughtful, and I cherished it dearly, keeping it safe in my room. As we all settled in, Alan's dad took the lead and apologized for not informing my dad earlier that he was my father-in-law. It was a good step to break the ice, and from there, everyone started mingling and getting along. My mom and Elaine even cleared the air, and it seemed like they were bonding over how adorable Catalina was and how she had gotten my eyes and Alan's nose. But in the middle of it all, I noticed Elaine was missing. I went to look for her and found her in my room. Elaine was soaking the scarf my mom made in her glass of fine wine, and to make matters worse, she poured the remaining wine all over the blanket. I could not believe the audacity of this woman. Without thinking, I snatched the wet scarf from Elaine's hands and stormed back into the living room where everyone was seated. All eyes were on me, and Elaine followed me out. Okay, that's it, Elaine. You've been driving me nuts since day one, insulting my parents, acting all high and mighty, and now ruining this sweet gift from my mom. You've been nothing but bitter, and you've treated me like trash. What the hell, Mom? What did you do now? Alan interjected. She ruined the present my mom got us. How immature is this? Why are you doing this? Being this petty isn't making you look good, you know. I've given you way too many chances. I've seriously given it so many tries to let go of the past and move on, but it's like you're stuck in your ways, huh? I've been putting in the effort to build a connection with you because I genuinely care about your son. I've put up with all the nonsense, but it's like you're not even willing to hear me out. You're just so set on trying to hurt me. I think it would be better if you just left and stayed away from my family. Alan, please, honey. You're my child, and yet you're the one who's acting like a child. We've tried to give you a chance to make things right, but you keep pushing it. I won't tolerate this behavior anymore. Dad, can you take Mom home? Elaine, maybe it's best if we go home now, William chimed in. Let me tell you, it was like a drama straight out of a reality show. When Alan put his foot down and asked his mom to leave, the whole room went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Elaine's face turned white as a ghost, and she started bawling like a baby. It was like a soap opera unfolding right before our eyes. I have to admit, seeing the look on Elaine's face after her son asked her to leave was pretty satisfying. As she walked out with tears in her eyes, I couldn't help but feel a little vindicated, and it felt pretty darn good. I always believe in treating people with kindness and respect, but sometimes some folks just need to learn their lesson the hard way. Alan was very apologetic to my parents, and honestly, they deserved it. Even my dad told me that the next day, my father-in-law reached out to him at work and apologized for his wife's behavior. But hey, we're done with all that nonsense now. We've cut off Elaine from our lives, and good riddance, I say. Ain't nobody got time for that negativity when we've got our adorable little Catalina in the picture. Alan was a bit down about his mom, but he's doing what's best for our little family, and honestly, she's been trying to reach out through William, but it's all just a show. I ain't falling for that act again. What goes around comes around, folks.
The rain pounded against my car windows as I watched my husband David pack my belongings into cardboard boxes. From the driveway, I could see his mother, Patricia, standing smugly in our doorway, finally victorious after 2 years of trying to destroy our marriage. "I can't believe you lied to me," David had said just hours earlier, his voice filled with hurt and betrayal. "Mom showed me everything. Your car registration to a parking lot, your suspicious bank transfers, even photos of you sleeping in your car. You're not really a software engineer, are you? You're homeless, using me for money." If only he knew the truth. The suspicious transfers were to my father's medical research foundation. The car registration was for my corporate parking space at Jong Industries' secure facility. And those photos of me sleeping in my car, taken during my overnight surveillance shifts, monitoring potential corporate espionage. But I couldn't tell him any of that. Not yet. Not while my father was still tracking down the people who had tried to destroy our company and kill him 5 years ago. "David, please," I called out from my car. "Just let me explain." "Explain what, Sarah?" Patricia's voice dripped with fake concern. "How you fooled my son with your sad stories about your dead father? How you claim to work for some mysterious tech company but can't ever show him your office?" She walked over to my car, designer heels clicking on the wet pavement. "I had you investigated, you know. There's no record of a Sarah Zhang working as a software engineer anywhere in the city. Just a homeless woman with a history of dating wealthy men." I gripped my steering wheel tighter, fighting back tears. The investigation must have been what triggered our security protocols, erasing my digital footprint. Dad had warned me this might happen, that someone might start digging into my past. "I know what you really are," Patricia continued, leaning close to my window. "A gold-digging scammer who thought she could trap my son. Well, guess what? I win. David's filing for divorce, and you'll never see a penny of our family's money." What Patricia didn't know was that her family money was nothing compared to what I really was, the heir to Jong Industries, one of the largest technology conglomerates in Asia. My dead father was very much alive, working undercover to expose a corporate espionage ring that had nearly destroyed us 5 years ago. As I watched David carry the last box inside, my secure phone buzzed with a message that would change everything. "Operation complete. Coming home. Time to show them who you really are. Dad." Attached was a news alert that made my heart stop. Buri A. King. Tech billionaire Michael Zhang returns after 5 years. Zhang Industries stock soars. Patricia was still gloating at my window when she noticed the headline on my phone. Her face went from smug to shocked in an instant. Zhang Industries, but that's impossible. You're just a homeless. The sound of helicopter blades cut her off. A sleek black chopper with the Zhang Industries logo was descending onto their perfectly manicured lawn. The helicopter's landing kicked up a storm of debris across Patricia's prized rose garden. David rushed outside, shielding his eyes from the swirling wind as the aircraft's door opened. My father stepped out, looking exactly as he had 5 years ago. Elegant in his tailored suit, silver hair immaculate, that familiar kind smile on his face. Behind him, a team of serious-looking men in dark suits spread out across the property. "Sarah," he called out, ignoring Patricia and David completely. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" I stepped out of my car, rain soaking through my clothes. "Dad?" Patricia's face cycled through shock, confusion, and fear. "Dad? But you're dead." The investigation showed. "Showed what, Mrs. Harrison?" Dad's voice turned cold. "That Sarah's father died in a car accident 5 years ago. That she has no employment records. No permanent address." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Your investigation was very thorough. Unfortunately, you were investigating a cover story." David stepped forward, looking lost. "Cover story? What's going on?" "Perhaps," Dad suggested, "we should continue this conversation inside. Unless Mrs. Harrison would prefer to discuss her connection to Harrison Technologies out here in the rain." Patricia's face went white. Harrison Technologies, our biggest competitor and the company behind the attempted takeover that have forced Dad into hiding. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered. Dad pulled out a tablet, displaying documents that made Patricia sway on her feet. "Really? Then perhaps you can explain why you've been meeting with your brother, James Harrison, every Tuesday at the Crown Hotel. The same James Harrison who orchestrated the attempt on my life 5 years ago." David's head snapped toward his mother. "Mom? What is he talking about?" "It's all lies," Patricia shrieked. "She's the liar. Living in her car, pretending to be poor. Actually, I finally spoke up, my voice steady. I never pretended to be poor. You just assumed. Those photos of me sleeping in my car? I was monitoring your meetings with Harrison Technologies executives. The parking lot registration, it's for the secure underground facility where we've been tracking your brother's corporate espionage operation." Security footage began playing on Dad's tablet, showing Patricia passing confidential documents to her brother, planning the takedown of Zhang Industries from within, using her son's marriage to get close to the heir of their biggest rival. "You see, David," Dad explained gently, "your mother isn't just a concerned parent. She's been part of a corporate espionage ring for years, and when you married my daughter." But before he could finish, Patricia made a desperate dash for her car. She didn't get far. The serious-looking men in suits moved with practiced efficiency, blocking her escape. "Mrs. Harrison," a familiar voice called out. "Or should I say, Agent Harrison? I believe we have some questions about your CIA credentials." Federal agents emerged from unmarked cars surrounding the house. But as they moved to arrest Patricia, I noticed something strange in her eyes. Not fear, but triumph. "You really think this is over?" She laughed. "You have no idea what's really going on. Why do you think I pushed so hard to end this marriage today specifically?" Dad's phone suddenly buzzed with multiple alerts. His face darkened as he read them. "Sarah," he said urgently, "check the house. Now. Because today wasn't just any day. It was the day Zhang Industries was supposed to announce its revolutionary quantum computing breakthrough. And Patricia's desperate scheme to separate me from David suddenly made terrible sense." I raced into the house with Dad's security team, heading straight for my home office. The door was ajar. It had been locked when I left. Inside, my secure laptop was missing, and my backup drives were gone. "Looking for these?" David's voice came from behind me. He stood in the doorway, holding my laptop and drives, his face unreadable. "David, please," I said carefully, "you don't understand what you're holding." "Actually," he replied, "I understand perfectly." He pressed a sequence of keys on my laptop, and my heart stopped as I recognized the initialization sequence for our quantum encryption prototype. "How did you know the sequence?" He smiled sadly. "Because I helped design it. Project Phoenix ring any bells, Sarah? Or should I call you Agent John? Dad appeared behind him, and for the first time in my life, I saw real fear in his eyes. You're counterintelligence, Dad said quietly. CIA deep cover assigned to watch both sides, my daughter and your mother. David nodded. 5 years tracking Harrison Technologies' espionage. 3 years documenting Zhang Industries' quantum computing program. 2 years, his voice caught, 2 years falling in love with my target. The room felt like all the air had been sucked out. Was any of it real? I whispered. All of it, David replied. Every moment. That's what makes this so hard. He turned to my father. Mr. Zhang, your quantum computing breakthrough isn't just revolutionary, it's dangerous. In the wrong hands, it could crack every military encryption on the planet. We developed it for medical research, Dad protested, for predicting protein folding, finding cures. And what happens when someone like Harrison Technologies steals it? David countered. Your sister-in-law Patricia isn't just a corporate spy. She's a front for an international technology cartel. They've been playing both sides, Zhang Industries and Harrison Technologies, waiting for this moment. Suddenly, more alarms started blaring. On my office screens, security alerts flashed from Zhang Industries facilities worldwide. Right now, David continued, simultaneous raids are happening at every Zhang facility globally. The quantum computing data is being seized by international authorities. Your technology is being classified as a national security risk. And my mother? I asked, pieces finally clicking into place. Deep cover CIA, like me. Her arrest outside is theater, giving her cover to escape with the real target. Which is? David's face softened. You, Sarah. They don't just want the technology. They want the person who can rebuild it from memory. That's when the house's lights went out and gas started seeping through the ventilation system. I'm sorry, David said, pulling on a gas mask, but you're both coming with us. As my vision started to blur, I saw more figures in tactical gear entering the room. But through my fading consciousness, I noticed something odd. Dad was smiling. David, he said calmly, did you really think we didn't know? About you? About Patricia? About everything? The last thing I saw before passing out was Dad pressing his watch and the floor beneath us starting to move. When I regained consciousness, I wasn't in a CIA black site as expected. Instead, I was in a familiar place, the real Zhang Industries Command Center, 50 stories beneath our Hong Kong headquarters. Welcome back, sweetheart, Dad's voice came from nearby. I opened my eyes to see him sitting calmly at a control panel. Next to him, bound to a chair but very much awake, was David. How? David struggled against his restraints. The gas, the tactical team. We're all mine, a new voice said. My mother walked in, very much alive despite having supposedly died when I was a child. Did you really think the CIA was the only one who could run a deep cover operation, Agent Sullivan? Mom looked exactly as I remembered, just older and somehow more formidable. She was wearing a Zhang Industries executive suit, not the tactical gear from earlier. You see, Dad explained, we've known about the CIA's interest in our quantum computing project from the beginning, just as we've known about Harrison Technologies' infiltration attempts. So we created a triple-blind operation. The screens around us lit up, showing years of surveillance footage. David's recruitment, Patricia's meetings, everything. Sarah's homelessness was indeed a cover, Mom continued, but not for what you thought. While you were investigating her, she was allowing you to investigate her, all while running the real quantum computing project from a different facility. The prototype you seized, I finally spoke up, my voice hoarse, was a decoy. The real breakthrough happened 6 months ago. We just needed to flush out all the players. David's face showed the first crack in his professional demeanor. 6 months, when we got married. I did love you, I said softly. That part was real, but I also knew who you were from the day we met. Because I chose you, David. Not the other way around. Agent Sullivan has an impressive record, Mom added. Top of his class at Langley, perfect deep cover credentials. Exactly the kind of person we wanted watching over our daughter while we completed the real project. Dad pressed a button, and screens worldwide showed Zhang Industries stock soaring as we announced not just a quantum computing breakthrough, but a complete quantum encryption platform. one that would make unauthorized surveillance impossible. So you see, Dad smiled. Everyone played their part perfectly. The CIA got their operation, thinking they were shutting down dangerous technology. Harrison Technologies thought they were closing in on their target. And he looked at me proudly. We changed the future of global communications. What happens now? David asked quietly. I stood up, walking over to him. That depends on you. Because while everything else was calculated, falling in love with you wasn't part of the plan. And now you have a choice. Mom handed me a key to his restraints and a Zhang Industries security badge. You can go back to the CIA, report what happened. Watch your career disappear as they realize how completely they were outplayed. Or, I held up the badge, you can join us. For real this time, no more covers, no more lies. Why would I trust you now? He asked. I leaned in close, whispering, because I'm giving you the one thing nobody else has, the truth, and a choice. 1 year later, Zhang Industries' quantum platform has revolutionized secure communications. David runs our counterintelligence division using his CIA experience to protect what we built. Patricia and her brother are in federal custody. It turns out even the CIA doesn't like being double-crossed. As for me, I still drive the same car, but now everyone knows who I really am. Sometimes on late nights at the office, David and I look back at our wedding photos and laugh about how many spies were in attendance, his, mine, and at least 3 other agencies. Mom says true love can survive anything, even international espionage. Dad says trust is built on truth, even if that truth takes time to be revealed. Me, I believe the best operations are like the best relationships, built on understanding not just who someone appears to be, but who they really are beneath all the covers and codes. And sometimes, the greatest security isn't in what you hide, but in what you choose to reveal.
Well, well, it appears that our less educated daughter-in-law, the unremarkable plain Jane, is about to grace us with her singing. Come on, step onto the stage, you ugly duckling, my mother-in-law sneered. It was my sister-in-law's wedding reception, and I was coerced into performing a solo, as was customary whenever my mother-in-law found an opportunity to belittle me. Her audacity to humiliate me, even on such a joyous occasion as my sister-in-law's wedding, was beyond my comprehension. What's taking so long? Hurried up? She's getting impatient. Her voice hardened. Okay then, I will. Excuse me. I stood up from my seat and slowly made my way towards the stage. I'm Erica, 33 years old, living with my 4-year-old daughter Janice and my husband Paul, who's the same age as me. We're in our 8th year of marriage. Orphaned as a child, I was raised by my grandparents but chose to be independent, dropping out of high school to work at a local factory. Paul and I reconnected at a high school reunion when we were 21, hit it off, and started dating. 3 years after Paul graduated from university, we got married. Since then, I've been supporting him, managing our household chores, and raising our daughter while working part-time. Mom, teach me how to sing. Janice has been asking me recently. Neither Paul nor I had any intention of forcing music onto her, but I have a background in music, having been the president of the choir club in high school. I still love singing and even take voice training lessons as a hobby. Janice developed an interest in music naturally, and I hope that one day we can perform together with Paul's music. Returning home 3 days later, my mother-in-law called, resuming her habit of belittling me since she discovered I dropped out of high school. She often showered me with insults, criticizing my abilities and family background. She wasn't my favorite person. Hello, is Janice there right now? My mother-in-law asked. I'm sorry, she's at voice training right now. She's not home, I replied, realizing I had let something slip, but it was too late. Why didn't you tell me before letting her attend such things? You really don't think things through. I'll teach her, my mother-in-law insisted. Despite her accomplished musical background, she tended to take a condescending tone when it came to music and education. She doted on our daughter but might inadvertently push her away if she followed the same strict teaching approach she used on Paul and his sister in the past. Mother-in-law, I appreciate your offer, but I want Janice to have her freedom in this. Even if you say that, it's really up to Janice whether she wants to continue or not. I can't force her to quit. I'm sure it would be much better if I taught her. My mother-in-law abruptly ended the call. 3 months passed, and I'd almost forgotten about the incident when my mother-in-law decided to visit our home. It's been a while, hasn't it? Oh, how's Janice been doing? She inquired, likely happy to see her granddaughter after such a long time. As soon as she stepped into our home, she immediately scooped Janice into her arms, barely greeting us. It just so happened that Janice had the day off from her voice training class, and the whole family was at home. Granny, I've become good at singing, Janice exclaimed, boasting to her grandmother. Really? Could you sing something for me then? My mother-in-law asked. I intervened, worried about what my mother-in-law might say to Janice. How about we eat first before we hear her sing? It's lunchtime after all, I suggested. Don't interrupt when she's about to sing for me. My mother-in-law dismissed my suggestion. I'm sorry, Janice dear. Can you sing for me? My mother-in-law asked. Hearing her request, Janice began to sing. From the perspective of a mother-in-law who graduated as the valedictorian of a music conservatory, my daughter's singing must have sounded rather clumsy. I had a sinking feeling inside me, worried that my daughter might receive some snide remarks from her. However, my mother-in-law applauded and praised my daughter, saying, "You did well. You've practiced a lot." Far from making any sarcastic comments, she thanked her grandmother, seeming happy to be praised. I sighed in relief, thinking that even my strict mother-in-law wouldn't make snide remarks to her granddaughter. I thought Mom might say something. I was a little worried. Paul whispered to me with a look of relief on his face. Nothing particular happened after that. But as the evening came, I realized that Janice had fallen asleep. Excuse me, mother-in-law. Since Janice fell asleep, I'm going to take her to her room, I announced, picking up Janice and carrying her to her bedroom. After putting my daughter to bed, I returned to the living room. As soon as I re-entered, my mother-in-law said to me, "Didn't you think that Janice's singing today was terrible, Erica? It's a waste of money to let her go to a class that can only teach her to that level. I'll teach her myself." I confronted Paul as anger welled up within me. Wait a minute, isn't that a bit too selfish? What can we do when it comes to music? She's much better than me, and it's a fact that I got better by being taught by her, Paul reasoned. About 5 minutes of silence followed, and it was Paul who gave in and said, "All right, Mom, go ahead and teach Janice to sing for a while." Hearing those unbelievable words from Paul's mouth, my mind went blank. Is this some kind of joke? Won't they care how Janice feels? After all, she has been so happy to be interested in music. What if Janice hates music because she's taught so strictly by her grandmother? I was so angry that I felt like waking up Janice right at that moment and leaving the house with her. So I guess it means Janice is quitting the voice training class, as I said, right? My mother-in-law, with a triumphant look on her face, asked Paul and me. All right, but remember, this is not a music conservatory, so please absolutely do not do anything that Janice would dislike. I know that you know I'm not uneducated like you, I retorted, stating what I had to say, knowing she'd never back off, and I let her go home for the day. That night, my husband apologized for his mother's behavior, but I did not even want to see his face. I ignored him and went to bed. The next morning, I told my daughter Janice, "From today, instead of going to the voice training class, let's have Grandma teach you to sing here at home, all right?" When she heard it, she looked very sad but said nothing and just nodded. I apologized, seeing her like that. Then, come noon, my mother-in-law arrived at our home. "Janice, starting today, Grandma is going to teach you to sing even better," she said to my daughter with a smile. No sooner had the lesson started than my mother-in-law's teaching style became more and more strict. Within an hour, she criticized Janice harshly, demanding perfection. "You're wrong. You're making the same mistake in the same place. Do it again. I knew it would turn out like this. Mother-in-law, this isn't what we agreed to, is it? Could you be a bit gentler?" "What are you talking about? I'm being gentle. Don't interfere. Why don't you quietly do some housework that you can hardly handle?" 4 hours passed, and at last, my mother-in-law's lesson ended. "Well, see you tomorrow. Remember to practice what we did today," she left, seemingly pleased with herself. "If I'm going to get yelled at this much, I don't want to sing anymore," seated in her chair, Janice said to me. I harbored an intense hatred for my mother-in-law, taking away what my daughter enjoyed and only caring about her own satisfaction. This cannot go on. I won't let my mother-in-law have her way. Her singing lessons continued in the days that followed. However, after about a week, Janice told me, "I don't want Grandma to teach me anymore. I don't want to sing." Given my mother-in-law's way of teaching, I thought it couldn't be helped. You don't have to force yourself. If you want to quit, that's okay too. So you don't want to go back to the voice training class. It was something she had started because she wanted to, and I, for my part, wanted her to continue. So I asked her that. If it's that class, it seemed that Janice hadn't come to hate singing itself. It appeared that the harsh words from her grandmother and the lack of praise, even when she felt she did well, were making it unenjoyable for her. "Why don't you go back to your voice training lessons and give it another shot?" I asked Janice, and as if she hadn't been upset moments before, she perked up and nodded enthusiastically. "So I'm sorry to say this to you, grandmother, but from tomorrow, Janice will be returning to her original voice training classes." The next day arrived. I relayed Janice's feelings to her grandmother over the phone. "How can she whine about giving up after just a week? Isn't it your fault for raising such a weak-minded child?" My mother-in-law exclaimed. I retorted, "Well, it might be, but even though you graduated top of your class from a prestigious music college, it seems that's the only way you know how to teach." Janice told me that she preferred her voice training teacher. Fussing and fuming, my mother-in-law continued, but I ignored her and hung up. Whether she was top of her class or not, it was quite satisfying that her own teaching method had led to her being disliked by her granddaughter, who preferred her voice training teacher. After that, the visits from the grandmother ceased. "I've spoken to your mother and told her it was okay if she didn't come to teach anymore." Janice said she didn't want it anymore either. I also feel like I've done something unforgivable to Janice. Back in the day, my mother was very strict with me about music, so I couldn't say anything. But I thought she wouldn't be so harsh on her granddaughter. "I'm really sorry," I confessed to my husband Paul that night. When I relayed this to him, he seemed deeply regretful and apologized. I was so angry when Paul suggested quitting Janice's voice training class and having the grandmother teach her. I almost felt like punching him, but fortunately, Janice didn't come to hate music, so I decided to forgive him. 2 weeks later, Paul said, "My sister is getting married in a month, and she asks us to perform. I had never performed at someone else's wedding before. What kind of performance is she expecting?" I was planning to bring a few people from my band and do a small concert, but my sister really wants you and my mother to sing as well. Hearing that the grandmother would also be performing, I reluctantly accepted Paul's suggestion. "So, does that mean I'll be singing with your mother?" "Well, yeah, that's how it seems." Singing with my mother-in-law of all people, I wondered if it would be all right. But if I happened to sing better than her at this performance, I wondered what she'll say. I started practicing the very next day, but there was no sign of my mother-in-law practicing at all. "Mother, aren't you going to practice?" "I'm fine. I'm much better than you, even without practicing. After all, practice is something that people like you, who are not very good, need to do." I tried asking because I was curious, but the only response from my mother-in-law was sarcasm. I decided it was a waste of time to engage with her and focused on my own preparations. After we decided what song to perform, I also increased the frequency of my voice training lessons. I was sick of being ridiculed by my mother-in-law And above all, I was anxious about performing in public after such a long time without proper training. On the day of my sister-in-law's wedding, the ceremony went smoothly, and the time for the entertainment had finally come. First, my husband Paul took the stage and began to play his music. As expected, given he plays regularly, he was confident and exuded an elegant aura. I was utterly mesmerized by Paul's performance. "I'm not feeling well today. Could you sing on your own?" Then, out of the blue, my mother-in-law told me to sing solo. "What? That's so sudden. It's not fair." "Well, there's nothing we can do about it." "Or what? Are you too embarrassed to sing in front of others because you're uneducated and ugly?" She said this without a hint of remorse. "Okay, I know it. She's doing this on purpose," I thought and decided to retort. "Being uneducated and ugly. I've practiced hard, so I won't be embarrassed singing in front of others. I asked you several times if you needed to practice, but you showed no signs of doing so. Could it be that you're actually a terrible singer?" "That's not true." My mother-in-law raised her voice in response to my question. The people around us began to stir, wondering what was going on. Sorry, it's nothing." I got up from my seat, apologized to those around me, and then pressed my mother-in-law further. "Graduating as valedictorian from the music college, you sure talk big about teaching others, huh? Are you running away because you're embarrassed to sing with me since I'm better?" I whispered this in her ear. "What did you say? There's no way that's true. If I sing with a low-educated, ugly person like you, it would only throw me off. Didn't your parents teach you that you and your parents are truly incompetent?" She disparaged me as being uneducated and ugly and even insulted my parents in front of everyone. Embarrassed and angry, I wanted to leave right at that moment, but if I ran away now, it would just make her happy. "What are you doing just sitting there? Hurry up and go." "Okay then, I will." "Excuse me." Just as Paul's performance ended, I took his place on stage. I was supposed to sing with my mother-in-law, but due to her not feeling well, I would be singing solo. Instead of the song I was supposed to sing with her, I chose an opera song I used to sing a lot when I was competitive, an aria from The Marriage of Figaro. And so, I began to sing. At that moment, perhaps due to the vocal training I had done, my condition was excellent, and I was able to produce the most beautiful vibrato I'd ever achieved. It was amazing. The audience was mesmerized by my singing, saying things like, "Wow, her voice is incredible," and "Is she a professional?" When I finished singing my song without any hitches, the audience gave me a standing ovation, showering me with thunderous applause. "Congrats on your wedding, sister-in-law." You know, I used to be the choir leader in high school. It's been a few years since I last sang in front of an audience, so I was a bit nervous. How did I do? Thanks so much for listening. After making this statement, I returned to my seat, and my daughter, all starry-eyed, pleaded, "Mom, your voice was so beautiful. Can you teach me next time?" Witnessing this, my mother-in-law, with her jealousy on full display, said in a huff, Anyone can sing like that. Don't get ahead of yourself," continuing to belittle my singing. Just as I thought the entertainment segment was over, my sister-in-law unexpectedly said, "Mother-in-law, and you should sing too." Words that I didn't expect came out from my sister-in-law. My mother-in-law was taken aback and looked at her daughter in confusion, asking me, "I've never heard you sing, Mom, and since you taught me so much about music when I was young, I'd really love to hear you sing," my sister-in-law expressed with pure honesty. The attendees chimed in, "Mother-in-law, you should definitely sing." Words had gotten around that my mother-in-law was a top graduate from a prestigious music school, and the crowd grew increasingly excited for her performance, creating an atmosphere where she felt she had to sing. "Well, with all this, I guess you have to sing now, don't you?" I did not hesitate to add, "So, all right. "If you insist," she responded, heading to the stage. The moment my mother-in-law took the stage, the energy in the room peaked. But as she began to sing, such murmurs could be heard throughout the crowd. "Wait, no way. I might even be a better singer. She must have heard them as well. My mother-in-law's voice did seem off, but even accounting for that, her singing was dreadful. She always criticized others for their singing, but her pitch was all over the place. Honestly, I felt I was still a better singer. The atmosphere grew awkward as her performance ended. Unlike when I sang, the venue was filled with a cold atmosphere, and the applause was sparse. Everyone acted as if they'd seen something they shouldn't have, as if her turn had never happened. Upon returning to our table, my mother-in-law, her face flushed red, shouted at me, "That's why I didn't want to sing. If you had sung properly, my daughter wouldn't have asked me to do this," she said to me with such an angry tone. But I didn't understand why my sister-in-law asked her mother to sing. It seemed to me that she genuinely wanted the wedding to be blessed by the voice of her mother, who had been sternly teaching her about music since her childhood. Do you think so? To me, it seems she genuinely wanted you to sing. I shared my honest thoughts with my mother-in-law. No way. I'm sure she knew I'm bad at singing, and this is her way of embarrassing me. I was utterly astonished at her response. She had always criticized others' music and performances, yet she herself didn't want to sing in public because she's bad at it. She never hesitates to complain about others' music, but she is like, "I don't accept complaints, although I'm a bad singer myself." Such a self-centered attitude won't be accepted. My daughter Janice might have her newfound love for music crushed by her grandmother. I could no longer bear my mother-in-law's attitude. So, a person who studied at a prestigious music school and criticizes others' music is just doing so because she can only sing this badly. But mother-in-law, isn't it great? You are able to sing alone without having to sing with a terrible singer like me. I responded to my mother-in-law with a sarcastic tone. How dare you say that? It's your fault that I had to embarrass myself. It's not nice to say that in front of your daughter. I'm sure she's satisfied hearing her mother singing. As I spoke these words, my mother-in-law fell silent. There was a stir amongst those who'd heard what I had said to my mother-in-law. But other than that, the ceremony went on smoothly and ended without any problems. 2 days after the ceremony, my mother-in-law stormed into our house. "I just can't let it go. I want you to apologize for what had happened." I was surprised by her sudden visit but retorted, "What exactly am I supposed to apologize for? I wasn't aware that your singing was that bad. Instead, I think you owe us an apology." "What do you mean? I have absolutely nothing to apologize for. It's your fault I was forced to sing that song I hated and embarrass myself." "No, not to me, to Janice, because of you." Janice almost came to hate the music that she had started to enjoy. Even though you graduated from a prestigious music school, why would you torment a child who has developed an interest in music just because things didn't go your way? Is that what you learned from your music school? I haven't received any musical training from you, yet I was able to sing at the reception and even received applause. How about you, mother-in-law? Shall I give you some singing lessons? I'll teach you thoroughly. My mother-in-law was speechless hearing what I said. If you have nothing else to discuss, please leave. I won't tolerate you interfering with our daughter or my husband's music anymore. Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law left our home without another word. Her shoulders slumped into defeat. I felt a sense of satisfaction from being able to retaliate so fiercely in her area of expertise, music. It was indeed worth continuing my voice training since my youth. Without the voice training, I might not have been able to receive such applause at my sister-in-law's wedding reception. I wonder how my mother-in-law, who has always boasted about graduating top of her class from a prestigious music school, felt being scolded this way by someone like me who only has a high school diploma and was just a choir member. To be honest, I felt a sense of poetic justice towards my mother-in-law. I thought, serves her right. She shouldn't act so haughty anymore. It's been a month since the wedding ceremony of my sister-in-law, and now my mother-in-law occasionally visits our house, but she doesn't complain about my daughter's singing anymore. I actually didn't mind my mother-in-law visiting since she did not say anything about music anymore. My daughter Janice, who has improved a lot in her singing recently, is challenging a slightly difficult song given as an assignment in her class. "Mom, this song is hard, but I'll try to sing it beautifully," she declared, practicing enthusiastically. "That's great. You do your best. You'll definitely do well." Although I love singing, don't know much about the technical aspects, so I had no idea what was difficult about the song. But seeing my daughter working so hard, that's all I could say. On that day, my mother-in-law, who happened to be visiting our house, observed the interaction between me and Janice and said, "Erica, this song is not something you can handle by just doing your best. Janice, listen well. You should do it like this." It was incredibly kind and patient of her, which was unimaginable given how she used to be, to explain until Janice understood. "Oh, thank you, Grandma. It's easier to sing now," Janice said as she listened intently to her grandmother's advice, working hard to master her assignment. "Erica, I used to look down on everyone doing music without graduating from a music college. But after meeting someone like you who can sing so beautifully without a music degree, I changed my mind. After all, we should enjoy music. Could you teach me to sing next time?" My mother-in-law said that looking at Janice singing. I was surprised to hear such a thing all of a sudden, but I'm sure the sarcastic comment I made after my sister-in-law's wedding had its effect. "My lessons are tough, you know. I grant this," I replied to my mother-in-law. "Oh, I won't do anything horrible anymore. I feel sorry for Paul too, although it's too late now. But if you're going to be tough, Erica, I'm prepared." After hearing that from my mother-in-law, I felt assured that she won't say anything about her music anymore. Although a lot had happened, the tension between my mother-in-law and me eased off, and since then, we've often gone to karaoke together, becoming close enough to sing together. I hope that one day when Janice becomes even better at singing, the four of us, me, Paul, Janice, and my mother-in-law, can have a fun jam session. Hello, I'm Dee, a 60-year-old woman. My husband passed away about 5 years ago, but I continue to work. I'm a mother of 5, and 4 of my children live in different states across the country, each with their own families. I feel incredibly blessed to have such a large and loving family. Jack, one of my kids, still resides in our hometown. He met his wife, Riley, at the local community college, and they got married soon after. I liked Riley, but I believed that my opinion didn't matter as long as Jack was happy. They pursued further education in their respective fields and eventually secured good jobs. When they decided to start a family, I was thrilled to have another grandchild, Jason. However, Riley was peculiar about my interactions with Jason, specifying when and how long I could visit. While this was understandable during the first year, it remained odd even when Jason turned 6. I respected their family dynamics, but over the years, limited interaction prevented me from forming a strong bond with Jason. Despite the distance, I made an effort to connect through our shared love for books. One day, out of the blue, I received a call from Jason at work, a rare occurrence given our infrequent conversations. Concerned, I asked if everything was okay. To my surprise, Jason was in tears, asking for my help. He claimed he needed saving from his devil mother. Shocked and confused, I couldn't reconcile Jason's description of Riley with the sweet person I knew. He shared distressing details about Riley's behavior when no one was around. As he abruptly ended the call, claiming someone was approaching, I felt a mix of confusion and concern. Though skeptical initially, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Unable to ignore my instincts, I made the decision to purchase a hidden camera, justifying it as a response to Jason explicitly seeking my help. I wrestled with the ethical dilemma of spying on my son's family, but believed it was necessary to either confirm Jason's concerns or retrieve the camera if all was well. I held on to the hope that a sincere conversation could resolve any underlying issues. The camera took a couple of days to arrive, and once it did, I set it up. Fortunately, this camera provided both live and recorded footage, accessible through a convenient phone app. With the technicalities sorted, I called my son. "Hello, sweetie. How's everything?" "Everything's great, Mom. What about you?" "It's the same old, same old. Although I was wondering about something and thought I'd ask you about it." "Yeah, of course. Is everything okay?" "Yes, yes. I was just thinking that we haven't met in a long time, and I was wondering if I could swing by your place one day." "Of course, Mom. How about this Sunday?" "That works. But shouldn't you maybe check with Riley if that's okay? Lord knows I hated it when your dad made plans without asking me about it." "I know. Riley would be really happy to have you over. Don't worry, Mom." "All right then. I'll be there around 5 o'clock. That works. See you soon. Take care." Even though my visit had hidden motives, I was genuinely excited to spend time with my son, considering I rarely saw the rest of my family outside the holiday season. I tried not to intrude, respecting their busy lives. The weekend arrived swiftly, and I got ready early. Wanting to bring something, I picked up a nice bottle of wine and a couple of books for Jason, who loved to read. Arriving at my son's house, I was warmly greeted by all three of them. Jason's relief was evident, making me concerned again. Since he hadn't contacted me after the initial call, I was unsure of what he would say. We spent the next couple of hours talking, having dinner, and enjoying wine. Eventually, Jason excused himself to his room, so I decided to talk to him. Riley subtly tried to stop me, but I insisted. Jack intervened, allowing me to go talk to Jason. Shutting the door behind me, I handed him the books, and we discussed them for a while. I refrained from bringing up what he had mentioned, wanting him to initiate it. As we moved on to other topics, he grabbed a notebook and began writing. Showing it to me, it read, "Mom's listening, can't talk about anything." Unsure if he was serious or paranoid, I went along with it. During our conversation, he discreetly agreed to the hidden camera plan. I found a suitable spot to keep the camera, providing a good view of the room. After starting the recording and confirming the camera worked, I spent a little more time with Jason. When I mentioned it was getting late and that I should leave, I intentionally left my scarf behind as an excuse to return whenever necessary. I vaguely heard hurried footsteps moving away from the door, but I didn't dwell on it at the time. I hugged Jason goodbye, bid farewell to Jack and Riley downstairs, and headed home, exhausted but with a plan in motion. Back at home, I checked the camera and stayed up for an hour to read, keeping an eye on the footage. However, nothing significant happened that night. I repeated the process the next morning, observing the footage after Jason returned from school. Again, nothing alarming occurred, and doubts about Jason's claims crept in. I decided to give it one more day, planning to confront the situation if the footage revealed nothing. That night, as I monitored the footage while reading, I discovered the disturbing truth. Riley entered Jason's room with a stick, Jack trailing behind her. I immediately unmuted the video and heard Riley questioning Jason about his entire day, demanding extreme detail. When Jason stuttered, she harshly accused him of lying, making him put his palms out for swift raps against his knuckles. I witnessed the increasing frequency of her strikes as Jason sobbed, and Jack stood by watching. Disgusted and disappointed, I couldn't comprehend why Jack allowed his son to endure such unnecessary punishment. While the urge to intervene surged, I hesitated, unsure of what to say. Rushing over immediately would raise suspicions, but I recalled leaving my scarf behind. Though I had initially used it as an excuse to meet with Jason, it now served as a pretext to return. I dialed Jack's number. "Hey, Mom, is everything okay?" "Yes, no worries. I hope I'm not disturbing you." No. Riley and I were just saying goodnight to Jason." "Ah, all right. I wanted to tell you that I think I left my scarf in Jason's room last night. Do you think I could swing by tomorrow and pick it up?" "Why don't I drop it off for you right now?" "No, I'm way too tired. I'll fall asleep before you even get here. I had a long day at work." "All right, Then why don't you swing by in the evening? I can't do that. I'm meeting up with friends for game night tomorrow. Riley and I won't be back till evening. Why don't you come by the day after? I need that scarf for tomorrow. We're having a Fed get-together. Well, you could swing by in the afternoon. Jason will be home. Lovely. I'll be there around 2. Good night, Mom. My heart raced as I fabricated the lie on the spot. At least my call served as a distraction, allowing Jack and Riley to discuss the situation without immediate interference. Whatever I had discussed with Jax seemed to have no effect on preventing Riley from punishing Jason. Before leaving Jason's room, Riley announced that he wouldn't receive any meals until dinner the next day. Appalled by this harsh decision, I wished I could dismiss it as an empty threat. But the reality was evident from the footage. Riley and Jack were likely to follow through. The following day, I took a day off from work, mentally preparing for the difficult conversation I knew I needed to have with Jason. Despite my assumption that he wouldn't want to continue living in such conditions, I felt it was essential to hear it from him before taking any action. Before heading to Jack's place, I ensured to pick up food for both of us. Upon arrival, Jason appeared on the verge of collapse, weakened and lethargic from the imposed hunger. I hastily provided him with his meal, watching as he devoured it. Seeing his suffering, my heart went out to him, and I was determined to make things better. After he finished eating, I spoke with him. Did you see everything that happened? Yes, darling, and I'm so sorry for laughing at you earlier. I had no idea. No, it's okay. I know Mom seems like the nicest person, but has she always been this way? The beatings only started recently, but the starving has been going on for a while. I just need to get a clearer understanding. Could you tell me why Jack isn't doing anything? He's too scared of Mom. He just follows her everywhere and listens to everything she says. Everything she wants, she gets. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry that you've been dealing with this for a while. But I am curious. Why didn't you eat anything at school? Mom didn't send me to school on days that she doesn't let me eat. I stay home. Mom measures how much of each food is there in the house, and if it's even 1 gram off when she gets back, I get punished. So she's starving you and jeopardizing your education. I'm definitely going to do my best to help you out, okay? I need you to tell me right now if you would like to come live with me. I'll take care of everything you need and keep you away from Mom and Dad. Of course, Grandma. Anywhere away from here will be great. I promise to only be good. Just please take me away from here. I promise I will, darling, but it will take some time. Do you think you can handle staying here for a little while longer? Yeah, I can. I've been living here for 12 years, so I can wait a little more. Carefully cleaning up and leaving no trace of the food, I ensured Riley wouldn't make things worse for Jason. After helping him clean up, I checked and double-checked to leave the place exactly as it had been. Upon returning home, I called Jack to let him know I had retrieved my scarf and thanked him for his cooperation. Next, I reached out to a friend specializing in family law. I explained the situation, and he cautioned me about the difficulty and duration of fighting for custody. He also mentioned the possibility of a temporary custody arrangement and warned that Riley could change her behavior to regain custody. Acknowledging the challenges, I decided to pursue legal guardianship based on the evidence I had. Knowing Riley's profession as a counselor at a middle school, I believed she wouldn't want child abuse allegations affecting her job prospects. With this in mind, I kept a vigilant watch over the footage in the coming days. As I compiled all the evidence and organized the paperwork for a guardianship transfer, I chose the weekend to visit Jack's without prior notice. Jack seemed surprised to see me at the door. Mom, what are you doing here? I need to talk to you and Riley. I don't think now's a good time. Why? What's going on? Just family stuff. Hold on. How come you're suddenly over so frequently? Can I visit my son? I didn't think I needed special permission for that. No, I didn't mean it like that. It's just that you've taken a sudden interest in us this week. And it's weird because you rarely ever drop by before. It isn't really weird. I only came over today because I have something seriously important to talk about with the two of you. I don't think. What's that sound? I suspected Riley was doing something to Jason due to Jack's evasiveness. When I heard loud crying from Jason's room, I pushed Jack aside and walked into the house, determined to protect him. Speeding to Jason's room, I burst in to find him sobbing, clutching his face. Riley was breathing heavily, looking at him with malice. I ran to Jason, and when he calmed down, I noticed injuries. A red, swollen cheek, bleeding knuckles, and welts on his arms from a stick. A rage unlike any other surged within me. What kind of monster would hit a child so harshly? Determined to protect Jason, I went to the kitchen, grabbed a bag of frozen veggies, and returned to help reduce the swelling. Assured he was okay, I decided to take him to my place that day. Descending to talk to both of them, Riley looked mad, and Jack seemed uneasy. How dare you just barge into our home that way? Isn't it a good thing that I did? You're hitting your child, for crying out loud. What I do in my family is none of your business. Your child is my grandson, and he is a part of my family too. You're hurting him, and I can't let that go on. He may be your grandson, but you don't live with him. You don't know what a brat he is. I'm just disciplining him. Who cares if he's a brat? He's a child, and there are so many other ways to discipline a child other than hitting them. I mean, you of all people should know this. I don't believe in any of that gentle parenting crap. Leave me and my family alone. You got it. I'm afraid I can't do that. What do you mean? I handed Riley the papers needed to sign for the transfer of guardianship. They both stared at the papers in utter confusion. What do you mean by proof? I set up a hidden camera in Jason's room last week, and I have all the proof I need. Neither of your jobs will appreciate what you guys do, especially yours, Riley. If you want to have any income at all, I suggest that you sign the papers. You were spying on us. That's a gross violation of our privacy. I was only acting on information that I had. I needed to make sure Jason was doing all right. Mom, don't do this to us. Give us another chance. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again. I don't want to hear any of it. I'm very disappointed in you, Jack. I raised you to be better than this. I'm taking Jason with me, and I expect the papers to be signed. If you don't, you know what will happen. I knew neither of them wanted to play with that kind of risk, so they didn't put up a fight when Jason and I walked out. I took Jason to get dinner and ice cream, trying my best to comfort him. In the weeks that followed, I gained legal guardianship of Jason. Riley and Jack cited plans to move to a different state and not wanting to disrupt Jason's education as reasons for transferring guardianship. They did end up moving, bringing relief. Jason is doing much better now, happier knowing he won't run into his parents for a long while. He's one of the kindest kids, thanking me every day. I intend to keep my promise to always protect him. Thank you for listening.
Hello, I'm Bianca, 30 years old. It's been a while since this incident occurred, but I feel the need to discuss it while the details are still fresh. Let me begin from the start. The first person I want to introduce you to is my husband, Matt. Matt and I first met back in high school. I was a shy kid with too much anxiety to make friends. However, for reasons only known to God, Matt took a liking to me. We were paired as lab partners in chemistry, and that's how we started talking. It took me a while to open up, but when I did, Matt asked me out on a date. Keep in mind that Matt was one of the most attractive guys at our school, athletic and smart. Despite being an anxious mess, I wasn't oblivious. I said yes, and our one date turned into many more. The longer I spent time with him, the more comfortable and open I became. I loved that I could finally express myself around someone. Matt was caring and understanding, never pushing me to do anything that would make me uncomfortable. I felt like I had hit the jackpot with him. Now, let me introduce you to my mother-in-law, Olivia. Olivia had faced challenges in life. Her husband, Matt's dad, had passed away when the boys were young. She raised them on her own, and I was always in awe of how she managed it. However, the issue was her unbearably overprotective nature, especially towards Matt. The first time I met Olivia, she scowled at me, and her overprotectiveness only intensified over time. She seemed to have a vendetta against me, never missing an opportunity to talk trash. Initially, I didn't pay it much mind, but as it continued, I spoke to Matt about it. One evening at dinner, when Olivia made a rude comment about my appearance as Matt left the room, he walked back in and confronted his mom. He told her she couldn't make such comments and defended me. Olivia tried to downplay it as a joke, but Matt stood his ground, demanding an apology. Even though I knew Olivia's apology wasn't sincere, it felt amazing that Matt stood up for me. I was grateful that Matt had my back, no matter what. Olivia continued to behave the same way even years after Matt and I were together, but it became easier to bear knowing that Matt had my back. The next person I'll introduce you to is Trent, Matt's younger brother. Trent was the only other person who made an effort to talk to me. He took an interest in getting to know me, and being Matt's family, being comfortable around him was a lot easier. We shared a lot of the same interests, and in general, got along really well. Matt was actually happy that I got along with at least one of his family members. For the longest time, I thought I had made a special friend with Trent, but as I tell you the events of the story, you'll realize just how wrong I was. The last person I want to introduce you to is Rachel, Trent's wife, and my sister-in-law. Rachel was the kind of person to bend over backwards to please someone else, regardless of whether the person was right or wrong. When she met Olivia for the first time, they got to talking and Rachel pretty much agreed with every view that Olivia had about me. Soon, Rachel became Olivia's partner in everything against me. That really hurt me. I mean, Rachel didn't even know me and she made an effort to get to know me, but she hated me because Olivia did. Over time, I learned to let go of it. Coming back to my relationship with Matt, we decided to get married once we were both financially stable. That took about 3 years after graduating from college. Once we had well-paying jobs and were able to purchase a house, we decided to tie the knot. Of course, Olivia was not happy with that. She tried to sabotage our relationship in many ways while we were engaged. For example, she tried to convince Matt that he was settling for me without ever having gone out with anyone else. She even tried to set him up on dates with other women, which he vehemently disagreed with. That one really hurt. I knew she didn't like me, but to actively try to make her son a cheater, something was deeply wrong with her. At our wedding, Olivia pulled another stunt to disrupt the good mood we were all in. When it was her turn to make a toast, she began to talk about how her son was marrying a woman she disapproved of and genuinely hoped that he would come to his senses soon and leave me. I cried, obviously, but Matt was furious. He had her kicked out, and for the rest of the night, he never left my side. That incident was what made Matt and me lose contact with Olivia. We didn't speak to her, except for the holidays, for the entirety of the next 2 years. We only saw her at Trent's wedding, and we tried our best to avoid her because, quite frankly, we were happy for Trent. We were trying to celebrate his big day, but somehow Olivia managed to corner us and she asked to talk. Matt didn't want to give her a chance, but I asked him to let her speak. After all, we could hear her out, but we didn't have to accept what she said. Look, I just wanted to say that I'm really sorry for everything I said that day at your wedding. If you were really sorry, you would have come over to our place and apologized. You had 2 years to do it, but you never did. I felt embarrassed. There was no way for me to behave on my son's big day, and I should have realized that if my son was happy, I should have been happy too. I guess I just didn't have the courage to face you. But we did call you on the holidays and your birthday. Even if you couldn't apologize face to face, you could have done it over the phone. It was just very hard for me. Okay, I'm still owning up to my mistake. I'm sorry, I'm still angry with you, and if Bianca doesn't forgive you, we'll go back to the way we've been operating these past 2 years. I liked that Matt allowed me to have a say in it. Unfortunately, I was very big on keeping family close. So of course I told her I forgave her. I didn't want Matt to be estranged from his only parents. Olivia seemed very grateful, and for a while after that, she treated me well. Then, about a year later, she went back to her old ways. This time, Rachel joined her too. They would constantly mock me, be it in things I said or did. It didn't matter because they always found a way to make fun of me. I tried my best to let go of things and kept Matt calm too. I knew that if either of us said or did anything, it would only end with us cutting all ties with Olivia, and I didn't want that for us. But one weekend, Matt and I were rudely interrupted by Olivia, Rachel, and Trent. It was supposed to be a weekend where Matt and I would sleep in and catch up on a bunch of shows that we had started watching. But that plan went out of the window when we heard banging on the front door. I lazily made my way to the door, and as soon as I opened it, Olivia and Rachel pushed past me and walked in. Trent followed them too, each of them holding a box that looked a little heavy. As Matt walked over to the living room, I could see that he was just as confused as I was. "What's going on? What are you guys holding?" "This right here is proof." "Proof of what?" "Of you having an affair." "Excuse me, what makes you think that I've been having an affair?" "I always knew there was something wrong with you, and I was not alone. I felt the same way too. I mean, at every family gathering, you suddenly had work once or twice. It's fine, but every single time, that's suspicious. It's not suspicious. I'm literally a nurse. You guys just happen to be there whenever I get called, and I get called in other times too. Wow, you're bold, lying right to our faces when we have proof. Matt, I swear I haven't ever cheated on you. I don't know what proof they have in there, but I promise you it's not me. Calm down, Matt, it's okay. I doubt you'd ever cheat on me. I'm just curious to see what Mom and Rachel found. Believe me, your views about your wife are about to change once you see them. How did you even get this evidence? Rachel and I hired a private investigator who followed Bianca around for the last 6 months. We just got the evidence from the PI's office and we came here straight away. That's beyond creepy and violating. What the hell is wrong with you guys? You have no say in anything, you cheating piece of crap. Enough, let Bianca and me see the evidence. I was furious at this point. What had I ever done to these two? I had always made sure that I had been out of their way, and yet they tried to come between Matt and me. To hire a private investigator to follow me around for 6 months, that made my skin crawl. Who does something that deranged to get rid of someone they don't like? I was more than curious to see what these results were. Matt looked at me, and for a moment, we had a silent understanding that everything was going to be okay. Matt knew I could never cheat on him. The reason, I have really bad social anxiety, it's almost crippling. It takes a long while for me to get comfortable with someone. He knew firsthand how he had struggled to get me to even talk to him. The last thing I could possibly do is talk to some stranger and sleep with them. Granted, working as an oncology nurse had been helping me get over my anxiety. I would come home after work and just shut down for the next few hours, and Matt had seen and dealt with all that from the start of our relationship. I had never met someone who was so understanding and patient. I had always thought that I would end up being single for the rest of my life. So, when the universe dropped the perfect guy for me in my lap, why the hell would I do something so horrible to him? We opened one of the boxes and saw quite a large number of pictures, and there were some of the investigator's notes paired along with them. But in all of those pictures, there weren't any clear faces. This woman did look shockingly like me, and for a second, my heart did drop. I turned to look at Matt, and his face had drained of color. I began panicking, so I searched the pictures for any signs that might prove that it wasn't me. I could hear Olivia and Rachel sniggering behind me. I was so close to giving up and crying until I came across this one picture where this girl had a tattoo on her right arm. I had no tattoos. I showed the picture to Matt, and his fear turned to confusion. It was like we were speaking in a silent language. I immediately knew that we had to figure out whose pictures we were looking at. We opened the other 2 boxes and began to scour through those pictures and notes. And that's when, in one of the notes, the investigator mentions me getting into a car with a particular license plate that looked very, very familiar. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, so I showed it to Matt. He took one look at it and burst out laughing. All of us stared at him in confusion. Matt then leaned down to my ear and whispered whose car it was. I was so shocked that I couldn't help but burst out laughing too. Olivia, Rachel, and Trent looked very confused. Now they waited for either Matt or me to explain what we were laughing about. But that never happened because Matt and I kept going through the pictures and just laughing even more. This made Olivia and Rachel really irritated. So they spoke up, "What's going on? Why are you guys laughing at the proof of Bianca cheating? Yeah, are you one of those couples that don't mind a third person?" "Oh God, no, absolutely not. We just found out something really, really funny." "What could possibly be funny about cheating?" "Oh, that's not me in the pictures." "Yes, it is. We looked through a couple of the pictures and it's definitely you. Look at this one picture. See the tattoo on the girl's hand?" "Yeah, Bianca doesn't have any tattoos." "What if it was a temporary one she put on so she could avoid getting recognized?" "I honestly hate having tattoos on me. I've never even put a temporary tattoo on me." "Okay, well, we made a mistake. What's so funny about that?" "What's funny is the identity of the man in these pictures." "The man? You can barely make out who that is. How do you know who he is?" "Because of the investigator's notes. Here, take a look at that car plate. Do the numbers look familiar?" Rachel grabbed the paper out of my hand. Olivia and Trent gathered around her to read the paper. As soon as they read it, I could see the range of emotions that they experienced. Olivia's eyes grew wide and her mouth fell open in shock. Rachel's face went white while Trent began sweating profusely. You see, the number plate was that of Trent's car, and the more you look through the pictures, the more you begin to clearly see that the man was Trent. Matt silently passed the pictures over where Trent's face was almost clearly visible, save for either a mask or a pair of sunglasses that he used to cover his face. Now, I didn't know why Trent was cheating on Rachel. but I must admit that it was really sweet to see Rachel's world come crumbling down the same way she wanted mine to fall. I was curious to find out why Trent was cheating, but I decided to just let Olivia and Rachel start the drama. I retreated and stood next to Matt. We were both trying our hardest not to break into laughter. "Trent, what is this? Are you cheating on me?" "Listen, I can explain." "Are you serious? This is not how I raised you." "I'm sorry, but I never loved Rachel to begin with." "What? Are you serious?" "Unfortunately, yeah." "Why? What did I do that was so wrong?" "You didn't do anything wrong, Rachel. I was just in love with someone else from the start." "Who was it?" "Bianca." "Excuse me? What the hell is wrong with you?" "Man, really? You were in love with Bianca? You chose this ugly witch over me. Since when?" "I've been in love with her since Matt introduced her to us. She was just so beautiful, and she was calm and quiet. I don't know, I liked that. Plus, when she did get comfortable enough with me, I found out that we shared a lot of the same interests." "Oh God, I'm going to be sick. So, you found someone who looked just like Bianca. I knew you guys were already trying to ruin their marriage. I sort of hoped I could speed it up, and if they did get divorced, I could swoop in and have her. First of all, she is not some property that you can have. Secondly, get the hell out of my house. You are sick and twisted and beyond any help. I hope you rot. Never come back, never speak to me or Bianca again. As for you guys, Mom and Rachel, I want you out too." "But we didn't even do anything." "You did enough. I entertained your little game, but now I am done. It's beyond disgusting that you hired someone to follow my wife around so you could try and break up my marriage. I want nothing to do with any of you. Out." I can't even begin to describe how queasy I felt. That was the last thing I expected. I just remember Matt holding me until I started breathing regularly. I was disgusted by the way Trent saw me. I had only gotten comfortable with him because he was the only one in Matt's family who actually tried to get to know me. But to find out that he had made that effort because he wanted me was beyond disgusting. Matt was not feeling any better. He was fuming. He couldn't believe that his own brother was capable of being such a creep. He promised me that he would stand by any decision I made regarding everything that happened. I obviously wanted zero contact with all of them, especially Trent. I never wanted to see his face ever again. Of course, Trent did try to reach out to me about a month after everything had happened. He actually tried to convince me to leave his brother. I later found out that he had sent those messages to me after he had gotten divorced and lost everything he had to Rachel. I had blocked him right away then, but when I think back on it now, it's amazing that he possessed that amount of audacity. Anyway, I had to go back to therapy for a while after that incident. I needed a place to vent about my feelings, and since it concerned his brother, Matt would get too wound up about it. He too went to therapy to sort his feelings out. It's been about a year since all of that happened. Matt and I have moved on and are living full and happy lives. We haven't seen or heard from Olivia or Rachel since then. I hope, if not anything else, that they learn to never meddle in anyone else's life. Back then, I was a mess after finding out what Trent thought about me, but now I'm at a place where I can laugh at it. I'm glad I came out of it strong, and even more glad that Matt and I's relationship also grew stronger. Always make sure to be kind to all those in your life. Thanks for listening.
Greetings, I'm Jenny, aged 27. 3 years back, I tied the knot with Hugo, the most remarkable person I've ever met. He's a delightful goofball, overflowing with kindness and compassion, making each day feel extraordinary. Regrettably, the same sentiment doesn't extend to his mother, Maria, also known as my mother-in-law. For reasons unknown, Maria has harbored animosity toward me since day one, a sentiment I comprehend. After all, Hugo is her cherished son, and she's merely safeguarding his interests. However, I firmly believe she sometimes crosses the line. Maria has a knack for subtle injustices that seem innocent, but are actually calculated to incite frustration, painting you as the unreasonable one. We all have encountered someone like her. Unfortunately, she happens to be my mother-in-law. I was brought up differently. I'm inclined to call out nonsense and rarely hold back. Perhaps that's what drew Hugo to me. Our contrasting personalities attracting each other, as they say. Having studied psychology, I can discern Maria's ill intentions. Our dominant personalities clash, which likely led to her first words to me. "Jenny, don't you think it's time to stop eating so much?" The table fell silent, stunned. Mortification painted my face pale as Hugo Kyle, my father-in-law, and Maria's son reacted. Hugo, though embarrassed, admonished his mother. "Mom, that's terrible to say. Jenny can eat as she pleases." Maria backpedaled, claiming concern for my well-being, citing old photos where I appeared better. Despite my embarrassment morphing into irritation, I kept calm, not wanting to cause a scene during our initial meeting. I graciously accepted her unsolicited advice. As time passed, such incidents increased in frequency and intensity. Despite bonding with everyone, Maria remained the sole dissenter, her disdain unfounded. Even Hugo's childhood friend, Jack, embraced me. Yet Maria persisted, even on my wedding day, behaving like a bridezilla, trying to undermine me. "No, her hair should be in an updo like mine was. But you look so ugly." Maria's antics persisted, but amid the turmoil, I cherished the love and acceptance from the rest of Hugo's family. The gasps from the bridal party were audible, yet I found myself unsurprised, having grown accustomed to such situations. In an attempt to rectify her words, my mother-in-law hastily backtracked. "Oh no, darling, that's not what I meant. You have the potential to look so much better. I see a lot of myself in Jenny. She's a bright young woman. Despite looking better at her age, I'd like to say she's beautiful in her own way." While my father-in-law managed to quell her ruthless antics on that day, the lingering pain and bitterness persisted. It went against my nature to remain silent and passive. My vibrant energy was diminishing, drained by this woman who seemed determined to undermine me. Fast forward 3 years to the current events of our story. We gathered at Hugo's childhood home, his parents' residence, for dinner on a Sunday night. My mother-in-law had graciously invited us, including Jack, indicating something significant was afoot. I had my suspicions, which were later confirmed, making the dinner plan seem more calculated. As the evening unfolded, my mother-in-law seized everyone's attention, announcing an important revelation. Armed with a paper, she began reading. "Attention, everyone. I have an announcement. Since my birthday is approaching, I want to share my plans. We're going to Hawaii." The paper confirmed the trip, met with excitement from everyone at the table. "That sounds fantastic." "What? Amazing news, Jenny. I've always wanted to go to Hawaii. This is great news. I'm so excited. Thanks so much, Ma." "Actually, you're not coming." "Honey, what do you mean? This wasn't part of the plan." I made some last-minute changes and canceled her ticket before incurring extra charges. So, my ticket was already purchased, and she just canceled it. Why does she hate me so much? "Mom, what are you talking about?" In the ensuing chaos, Jack and I remained silent. Harsh words flew back and forth until Maria finally offered an explanation. Okay, fine. I'll tell you why I thought Jenny shouldn't join the family event. As I'm getting older, I want to spend my remaining years with those I care about most. Unfortunately, Jenny doesn't belong on that list." "Mom, really? What's wrong with you?" "Nothing's wrong with me. I'm just saying Jenny can't be considered family since she's not related by blood." By that logic, Jack shouldn't go either, right? He's not technically family, as you're stating, but we all know that's preposterous. He is part of the family. Since Hugo and Jenny got married, she's family too. Well, Jack is different. He's always been here, our sweet baby angel. But Jenny hasn't. I'm just not comfortable with her on the trip. It's my birthday, and I get to decide. Come on, Jenny, we're leaving. My resolute no reverberated through the room, capturing everyone's attention, including my adversary, who had been struggling to contain a smile. However, her expression turned serious at once. "Maria, it's been evident from the start that you harbor disdain toward me. For 3 years, I've endured your unbearable behavior. Do you think we're blind to your actions? Do you believe we don't see your narcissism? Watch your tone, young lady. Remember, you're in my house. And it won't be for much longer. In fact, I'm about to leave. But before I go, there's something I need to say." I addressed my beloved husband, whose eyes burned with anger as he looked at his mother. "Darling, I love you completely, and I've tried to weather this storm for so long. But it's clear now that your mother will never embrace me into this family, no matter how hard I try or how often I hold my tongue. She'll always find fault with me. You should go on this trip. You can't miss it. Despite her quirks, she's still your mother, and you love her, and she loves you. So go. Don't worry about me. I'll manage. Turning to my mother-in-law, who appeared stunned by my words, I continued. And as for you, unfortunately for you, I'm in love with your son, and I'm not going anywhere. You might think you can push me out, but I'm here to stay. Even in Hawaii, you'll be thinking of me because, let's be honest, I think you're fixated on me. How dare you? I ought to slap you right now. I'm not done. You're fixated on me, obsessed with tearing me down, and I can't fathom why when all I've done is extend kindness and patience, even when you didn't deserve it. But enough is enough. If you don't want me in Hawaii or consider me part of the family, fine. But I will always be here. As long as I breathe, I'll be here for Hugo, Kyle, and even Jack, but never for you. In that moment, I realized I had finally silenced her. She stood with her mouth agape, seemingly searching for words that her mind wouldn't allow. I bid farewell to the other family members, kissed my husband on the cheek, and headed towards the exit. Let me drive you home, at least. I can't let you take a cab. Don't worry about me, babe. I love you, and thank you for loving me. But I'll be fine. You have a trip to discuss. Okay, if you say you'll be fine, I'll believe you. Oh, don't forget your purse. Right, my purse. I left it in the kitchen. Upon reaching the kitchen, where Maria had retreated, presumably to catch her breath after the altercation, I encountered her. What do you want? Don't worry about me, sweetheart. I'm just here to collect my things. Well, make it quick. I want you out of my house. I can't believe you said those things to me. With that, she swiftly stormed out, too filled with anger to see me off. In that moment, I scoffed at her absurdity, grabbed my purse, and noticed a piece of paper next to it. Assuming it was the trip itinerary, I grabbed it to sneak a peek at what I was missing. As I began to read, I discovered Maria's handwriting. Dearest Jack, you've always been like a son to me, and I love you dearly. Oh, it's a letter to Jack. A bit strange, but I suppose it's thoughtful. For some reason, my curiosity led me to read further. The love and care you've shown me throughout the years will never be forgotten. Regrettably, even in my son Hugo's case, I feel the love we once shared is no longer there. Wait, is she saying she loves Jack more than Hugo? That can't be right. Persisting in reading the letter, each line intensified my astonishment. The revelations were difficult to fathom. Although I recognized it wasn't my place to read the letter, I couldn't help but be grateful for stumbling upon it. After absorbing its entirety, I paced the kitchen, contemplating my next steps. Suddenly, it struck me. Everyone who needed to know about the letter was in that room. It was time to act. Rereading the letter to confirm its contents, I sauntered into the dining room, where only 3 pairs of eyes met mine. Jenny, I am profoundly sorry for what my wife is subjecting you to. Don't worry at all. You're coming to Hawaii with us. She's just going through a rough patch right now. I'll talk to her and make her see reason. I don't know what's gotten into her, but I'll sort it out, I promise. Kyle, please don't concern yourself with me. As I mentioned, I'm fine. In fact, I've stumbled upon some interesting news that I need to share with everyone, especially Hugo. Hugo and Jack perked up, a flash of worry crossing Hugo's face. Perhaps he feared I was overwhelmed and considering a divorce. Whenever I complained about his mother, he'd empathize, marveling at how I endured her antics. I'd reassure him it was my love for him that kept me going. Noticing Maria's absence, I inquired, "Where is Maria? She needs to be here for this too." I mentioned earlier, she's a bit under the weather after your confrontation. Mentioned a headache and opted for a nap upstairs. She won't be down for a while. You know how she is about her beauty sleep. Familiar with Maria's peculiar habits that often inconvenienced others, I sighed in frustration. This is crucial. She has to be here. It's okay, Jenny. You can share with us, and we'll fill her in when she wakes up. Contemplating the information I possessed, I hesitated. I wanted to witness her embarrassment. I think you should go ahead and tell us, sweetie. It's okay, and you know Hugo struggles with anxiety. It wouldn't be good to keep him waiting. True, Hugo's anxiety could escalate quickly, and I observed him beginning to fidget in anticipation. All right, I'll share with you what I found. While I was in the kitchen, gathering my purse and preparing to leave, I stumbled upon something intriguing that I believe you all need to know about. Retrieving the paper I found, I began to read aloud. It reads, "Dearest Jack, you know that you have always been like a son to me, and you know that I love you dearly. And the love and care you have shown for me throughout the years will never be forgotten. I hate to admit it, but even when it comes to my son Hugo, I feel as though the love we once shared is no longer there. Hugo and I just don't see eye to eye like we used to, and honestly, I think it's because of Jenny. Ever since he married that girl, he no longer has time for me. He doesn't love me, and therefore, I don't think I love him. I love you, and you are my son. With that being said, I want to let you know that I am going to update my will so that you inherit all of my belongings and not Hugo. I know it might hurt him, but honestly, at this point, I don't care. It's that wretched Jenny girl. She's the one who has poisoned my love for him. I hope you receive this letter well. The reason why I didn't want to approach you about it in person is that, and it pains me to admit this, I couldn't risk seeing the rejection on your face. I know you love Hugo like he's your brother, and most likely you won't approve, but I don't care. I'm giving you everything, the money, the house, the cars, and even my small businesses. They're all yours, whether you like it or not. If you want to talk about this further, please call me, and we can discuss it. I look forward to hearing your response. I will love you forever and always, your second mom." After finishing the letter, I glanced up to witness a flurry of mixed emotions. Kyle appeared on the verge of tears. Jack seemed stunned, but Hugo looked like he was on the brink of losing his temper. I can't believe she said all those things. Is she serious? So, she'd exclude me from her, well, just to spite me and Jenny? She's officially lost her mind, guys. I don't even know what to say. This has gone too far. I'm fed up with her toxic behavior. What are we going to do? In that moment, I had an idea. A week passed, and it was time for the planned Hawaii trip. Maria woke up to find a letter from her husband on her bedside table. It read, "Good morning, beautiful. We decided to let you catch up on your beauty sleep. Don't worry, your bags are packed. Just meet us at the airport." Maria hurriedly got ready and rushed to the airport, searching frantically for her travel companions. She tried calling them, but no one answered. Assuming they had already boarded, she boarded her flight, hoping to catch up with them in Hawaii. During the 12-hour flight, she landed and video called Kyle. "Hey, Kyle. Where are you guys? I woke up late and found your note, but none of you are answering. I assumed you boarded without me. Where are you? Let's start the festivities." "That won't be happening, Maria." "What do you mean? Where are you?" "I'm at home." "What? Why are you at home?" "You see, Maria, Jenny brought some important information to our attention last week, and since then, we decided we'd rather spend time in Florida with her than anywhere else with you." Maria gasped. "You think we wouldn't find out?" "What, my baby? Don't baby me. You were really going to cut me out of the will, Mom." Who? How did you even find out about that?" "Oh, that wretched girl you despise so much. Jenny found your letter in the kitchen." "I don't know what you're talking about, Maria. Lying right now is only adding more nails to the coffin. Jack, tell them. You've got to believe me. I did nothing of this sort." "We all read the letter, Maria. The game is up." But I didn't do anything. Jenny is making everything up." "Oh, am I? You are so pathetic. It actually makes me sick. We all know what you said and what you tried to do. Thank goodness I was nosy enough to read the whole thing. Hugo, Kyle, please." "No, Maria. Enough is enough. You're done. You don't get to say anything else. You messed up big time. Your hatred has caused you to be blind. Now you have to suffer the consequences of being alone on your birthday because of what you've done. I hope you can use this time in Hawaii to reflect on your actions. But I'll be alone. It won't be fun. Maybe people would like to hang out with you more if you weren't such a raging witch. Have fun." And with that, Kyle hung up the phone. We all let out a sigh of relief. I was the first person to start laughing, eventually joined by Hugo, and before we knew it, we were all bursting with laughter at the dining table, just laughing at the sheer absurdity of the situation. The look on her face once she realized the game was up was priceless. Her face turned pale, all the blood drained from her face, and it was evident that it was the first time in a long time that she felt embarrassed. Maria had to spend her vacation alone, frequently calling Kyle to see if he would at least come and join her because canceling the reservations she made would be expensive. But every time he kept denying it, stating that when she comes back, they were going to have to implement some ground rules if she still wanted to be married to him. Maria began to be very apologetic and frantic, a complete 180 from her usual demeanor, which was genuinely surprising. Hugo also mentioned that if Maria still wanted to be in his life, she had to make a drastic change in her attitude. Otherwise, he was ready to walk out of her life forever. Their relationship remained rocky, and Hugo asserted that if Maria ever disrespected him again, even with the smallest snide remark, he would cut her off completely, just as she had planned for him. As for Jack, he decided it was best to stop being overly accommodating to Maria, as it was clearly enabling her toxic behavior. So not only did Maria end up spending a miserable time in a beautiful place, but she also risked losing the 3 most important people in her life. She now has very strained relationships with all of them, and she has to change for the better. Regarding me, I messaged her, stating that I need time to decide if I'm going to forgive her for all of her injustices. She was apologetic and begged me to talk some sense into the men in her life. I refused, stating that this is the bed she made for herself, and now she has to lie in it. To this day, Maria is still attempting to mend the very broken relationships that she caused. I just hope she learned her lesson.
Making only $750 a month is like a college student's allowance. Even students working at bars earn more. Having a low-income wife is embarrassing. Maybe you should get a divorce so our son can find a better wife. After all, he's a great catch. My mother-in-law keeps making these rude comments after seeing a pay stub, but it's not even mine. My name is Amanda, and I'm a 32-year-old nurse. I've been married to John for 5 years. We met in college, started dating, and eventually got married. We first met at a party when he was a medical student and I was studying to be a nurse. John hasn't passed the medical licensing exam. He failed twice and took 3 years off. Now he's working part-time and studying hard for the exam. I'm working full-time as a nurse, so I make most of the money for us. John isn't into bragging about money or posting pictures of fancy cars on social media. He's serious about his work, reading stories about people who've lost loved ones to illness, keeping up with the number of people affected by infectious diseases, and studying Japan's healthcare system. I respect him even though he's not a doctor yet. He genuinely wants to help people, so I didn't leave him despite his lack of income and being in his 30s. He hasn't told his parents that he isn't a doctor yet. "Sorry, my mom is too nosy," he says. "It's okay. I support you, so you don't have to worry about your parents. Live your life the way you want. This is just temporary." That's why his situation remained a secret. No one knew because he worked as a night security guard at the hospital where I worked. This way, he was technically employed there. He had enough knowledge and information from my stories to sound like a doctor. So when his parents, who rarely saw us, asked about him, I said yes, patients really like him. I believe that while cruel lies can hurt people, kind lies can sometimes save them. Telling a patient you have 3 months left and there's no chance of recovery is like starting a countdown. It's better to say, "You look good today," and "You ate a lot." That's how people are. On the other hand, my mother-in-law is very different from my serious and honest husband. She has a harsh personality and is a typical overbearing mother-in-law. She looks down on me for being just a nurse married to her son, the doctor. There must have been so many better options, like a beautiful dermatologist. I always apologize and bow my head when she says things like that. I wholeheartedly support my husband in his pursuit of becoming a doctor, but right now, he's just a high school graduate with a lot of medical knowledge working part-time. He's not even a medical intern yet. However, my husband is genuinely grateful, often saying, "Thank you for everything always." So I silently support him. I'm also very busy with my work. Our combined income is barely enough to make ends meet, but it couldn't be helped. I didn't care much about money because I admired Florence Nightingale and wanted to help people. Currently, I'm a nurse in internal medicine, which has the heaviest workload. Wanting more money doesn't even cross my mind. As long as we can live, eat, and stay healthy, that's enough. Isn't that what life is really about? Even though I'm the one supporting my husband's living expenses and tuition, my mother-in-law tells everyone in the neighborhood, my son is a doctor and earns well. If he were a serious doctor, he wouldn't want his mother bragging about his income, whether good or bad. But my mother-in-law doesn't care and only talks about money, money, money. As her son, he has no choice but to silently endure it. She doesn't know that he's actually working as a security guard in uniform at the hospital instead of walking around in a white coat as she brags about. Even if he were walking around in a white coat, it's not something to boast and gossip about. I understand her pride, but she should hold back. I was worried that my husband's mental state might suffer and he might fail the medical licensing exam because he's barely hanging on. If he ends up spending his entire life as a security guard after trying so hard, it would be heartbreaking. His personality is perfect for being a doctor. His only weakness is his kindness. That's why my mother-in-law makes up stories and says things like, "My son makes $373,000 a year." For him, knowing that's false just adds more pressure. I once gently expressed my concern to her. I think it would be better for the patients if he didn't talk so much about his job because it might cause problems. After all, if you think about it from the opposite perspective, would you want to go to a doctor whose mother is constantly boasting about him when you're sick? But my mother-in-law doesn't care. Be quiet, you're just a nurse. You should feel lucky to marry a doctor. It's like winning a $3 million lottery. Money can't buy respect. You're just a nursing school graduate. She says mean things. I'm sorry. Thank you for letting me marry John. I respect him as a doctor and as a person, so please leave him alone. You're so annoying. We can make him divorce you and marry someone else. It would be sad if our future grandchild gets your low IQ. She's being really mean. But I stayed quiet. Compared to saving lives or feeling like I'm doing important work, my mother-in-law's mean words didn't bother me much. I didn't take her seriously, but one day she showed up at our house uninvited. Our house is a 30-minute train ride from theirs, so we don't see them often. I'm busy with work, so I'm not around them much. That's why she didn't know the truth until now. Wow, this house is small. Why does my son, who I'm so proud of, have to live in such a poor-looking place? She said loudly. She looked at the row of medical books and said, "Well, he is my son," and took a picture with her phone. But most of the books were for the national medical exam, so I felt nervous. Since this year's books were there, it might show he's still studying. I tried to stay calm, but my heart was racing. "Mother-in-law, I'm sorry. We're both busy with work, so we haven't had time to find a bigger place, especially recently." I hinted for her to leave. But then she started looking around our house. "What's with these strange dishes? If you're a doctor, you should buy fancy ones." "Yes, I'm sorry. They're from a cheap store." "What? Cheap store? I'm getting rid of them." "No, we didn't have much money because we were spending it on my husband's textbooks and tuition. So we saved money on things like plates that didn't affect our basic meals. As long as we could eat off them, it was okay. Right now, passing his exams was the most important thing." At that time, my husband happened to be working as a security guard at the hospital. It was a good thing he wasn't home. I didn't want him to get upset, so I wanted to get my mother-in-law to leave while he was at work. But she kept going through our stuff. "I'm going to get rid of these clothes that look like something a student would wear. If you're a doctor, you should wear expensive clothes. She threw away my husband's favorite clothes. And what's this? A cheap watch? If you're a doctor, get a fancy one, she said, tossing it aside, not realizing the usefulness of a smartwatch. Each thing she threw away was bought with the little money my husband earned. He would have rather been in the operating room treating patients than standing outside feeling humiliated. But he kept working hard for his dreams and the sweat he put into it. But she didn't stop. It's because he married a poor girl that you're living like this, even though he's a doctor. It's unbelievable. I thought we could go shopping together and maybe you could buy me a bag or something. Her words were really mean. I had to tell her that what she expected from my husband, whether he's a student or not, was different from how we lived. I was a doctor too. I wasn't just after his money. Mother-in-law, he's not that extravagant. We like our life the way it is, I said calmly. But she wouldn't listen. You're so frustrating. Do you know how hard he worked to get into medical school? My mother-in-law yelled, getting angrier. She kept searching my house, not stopping at the kitchen but going through every closet, throwing away anything she thought was cheap. Then she started looking through our bills and paperwork. That's when she found the pay stubs. They showed $750.25. Even though my husband's name was on them, she either didn't notice or couldn't read it. She shouted, $750. What do you mean $750? That's not my son's daily wage. Even anesthesiologists make $750 a day, and you're the wife of a doctor making only $750? Are you not working hard enough, or what? She started to lose control. That's why you're so poor. You're just using my son for money. You're barely working as a nurse and tricking a doctor. You're only doing part-time nursing because it sounds good. $750 is nothing, so quit already. That money was earned by him when other doctors passed him by, working hard between his study hours for a very low daily wage. It meant a lot to us. But my mother-in-law wouldn't stop being crazy, and then the worst happened. You're a poor wife who brings bad luck. Divorce her quickly. Just then, my husband came home from his part-time job. He looked shocked to see his clothes and wash thrown away. He started picking them up silently. But my mother-in-law said, John, I don't want to be mean, but please divorce her. Why did you, with your high education and income, choose such a pathetic woman? I'm so sad, and she only earned $750. But my husband didn't say anything. I couldn't tell what he was thinking. My mother-in-law laughed and said, I'll bring you the divorce papers. Leave this dusty room and this woman who smells like disinfectant and find a better wife. You're a doctor. You should remarry. Then my husband stood up slowly and said, Mom, I haven't told you this, but I'm not a doctor yet. What? I'm sorry for not telling you earlier, but I haven't passed the national exam yet. And about that $750. My mother-in-law was so shocked that she looked at me for help. I don't get it. This $750 paycheck is yours, isn't it? I realized there was no point in hiding it anymore, so I said, no, it's not mine. My husband added, that's my salary from my part-time job. That can't be, you're lying, aren't you? I'm not lying, it's true. I'm not a doctor yet. I failed the national exam twice. My mother-in-law was shocked to hear that her son wasn't a doctor yet. She started acting strangely and slipped on some newspapers she had scattered earlier while going through our house. She fell to the floor and cried out for help. Thankfully, she managed to avoid hitting her head, but her right arm, which she used the most, broke with a loud snap. It was definitely fractured. My husband and I quickly helped her and took her to the hospital, where we brought her to the orthopedic department. But my husband said, Mom, I'm sorry, but please don't come to our house anymore. And I don't want you to consider me your son anymore. My mother-in-law was trembling from shock, but my husband continued, I knew you were proud of me, but I couldn't keep lying. But when you insulted the money I worked hard for, that was too much. But I never thought you weren't a doctor. It doesn't matter if I'm a doctor or not. Do you think I'm studying just to earn $750 a day? I'm an adult, and it seems like we have different values, so let's end our relationship. It seemed like my husband had truly decided to cut ties with his mother. She, who had found purpose in boasting about her son, seemed completely heartbroken. Nowadays, she stays at home, too embarrassed to face her neighbors. That same year, my husband passed the medical licensing exam. Despite being a bit older, He started working as a resident physician and did exceptionally well, always showing kindness, like offering tea to the security guards. Our days became peaceful and happy. If my mother-in-law had just waited a few more months, her dream would have come true, and she could have seen him in his white coat. It's really a pity, but she brought it upon herself.
Mom, I can't continue living like this. Ethan and his mom barely let me eat. A sudden SOS call interrupted my distress. Ilana, come back home, I instinctively shouted. Ilana had become worryingly thin. I won't forgive Ethan and his mother, I resolved with determination. Let me introduce myself. I'm Jonna, a 50-year-old housewife. My husband James is 52 and works for a company. Our daughter is turning 26, having graduated from college and landed a job at a major corporation. She started living alone, and James and I were enjoying our life as a couple. Despite her success, Ilana was shy around men and hesitant in relationships. When she finally got a boyfriend, James and I were overjoyed. James kept urging her to bring him over, asking, "What's he like? Bring him home sometime." I cautioned James, "Honey, don't push her. She'll introduce him when she's ready. Let's wait patiently." Ilana soon smiled and said she'd bring Ethan over. "Dad, you kept insisting, so I complained to Ethan. He agreed to come over to meet you, but don't say anything weird to him, okay?" James was visibly delighted when Ethan came to greet us. James and I were nervous, but Ethan's friendly conversation soon eased our tension. Ethan introduced himself, saying, "Hello, I'm Ethan Smith, and I'm seriously dating Ilana with the intention of marrying her." Ilana blushed and said, "Marrying Ethan? You're embarrassing me. You said it was just a casual greeting." James happily told Ilana, "No, it's great that he's thinking about the future. Ethan, I entrust Ilana to you." Their relationship progressed smoothly with our blessing, and Ethan proposed formally 5 months later. Seeing a blushing but happy Ilana made both James and me very happy. I heard Ethan worked for a major bank system company, and James and I discussed how their future seemed secure. As wedding preparations began, Ilana frequently sought advice. One day, she asked, "Hey Mom, how much is the market price for a wedding ring?" "Ethan is planning to buy one for about $10,000. Surprised, I replied, "For wedding rings, maybe about $2,500 each for the couple. I've heard engagement rings are around $3,500. Ilana seemed a bit uneasy. I felt the same way after asking around and reading magazines. Ethan's sense of money was odd. However, when Ilana said, "Ethan insists it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing and wants me to have something nice," I conveniently interpreted it as Ethan wanting to give her a special gift. After some time, the two moved out of their bachelor's residence and into a condominium in New York. The area was very expensive but convenient for commuting. I expressed my concern to Ilana, saying, "Hey, Ilana, the area you and Ian live in must be pretty expensive to rent, right? Are you going to be able to afford the monthly payments?" She reassured me, "Don't worry, Mom. Ian's working hard and earns a decent salary too. His job requires living near the bank. Ethan is a systems engineer at a bank-rated systems company. If there is a problem, Ethan needs to rush to the site even in the middle of the night. That's why the location had to be close to the bank, within a short taxi ride." Apparently, Ilana explained, "Ethan's company gives a substantial housing allowance, so we're fine. Don't worry, Mom." Not fully understanding the system company's situation, I just accepted it as how things were. Months passed, and I invited Ilana for lunch before her marriage. Ilana and I often went for lunch together. However, after her marriage, when I invited her to join me, she often declined, citing being busy with work or having made other plans. James suggested that maybe she's just busy with her married life, but it didn't seem like Ilana was avoiding me. Over the phone, Ilana said, next Saturday. Oh, that's when Ethan is on a business trip. Sure, Mom, I can make it. I'll find a place for us. I was a bit thrilled to have lunch with my daughter after half a year. When I finally saw Ilana, she looked a bit pale. Concerned, I said, Ilana, what's wrong? If you're not feeling well, take it easy. Just stay home and rest, okay? Ilana reassured me, no, I'm fine. I've just been tired from MDI overtime lately. Plus, lunch with you might be just what I need to unwind. She managed a weak smile, and we enjoyed a good chat, just the two of us. About 2 hours in, Ilana's phone rang. She looked shocked when she saw the display. Ilana told me, Mom, I have to go home already. Ethan's mother is calling. She explained that Ivy was at their place. Surprised, I said, sorry for keeping you during such a busy time. Ilana reassured me, it's okay. You can hurry back. Apologizing, Ilana quickly left. Another half a year went by, and during this time, something terrible happened to Ilana. I learned about it from a phone call from her. It was a sad day, and James and I were enjoying our day off. While I was making her tea, suddenly my phone rang. The display showed Ilana. I quickly answered, and Ilana hesitantly started, Mom, it's me. I. She seemed unable to continue, and sensing something was wrong, I asked, what's the matter? Did something happen? Ilana remained silent for a while. Patiently, I waited for her to start talking. Eventually, she said, Mom, I can't live like this anymore. Ethan and his mom barely let me eat. I might not survive if this continues. Shocked, I asked, are you okay? Sounds like things are really bad. Why don't you come back home? Ilana seemed undecided. I firmly told her, if you're feeling unwell, you can just sit around idly. Come back home. We'll talk it over when you get here. Ilana responded, really? Can I come back? But I don't have any money. I can't leave. I thought this was strange. Ilana was earning a decent salary, but there was no time for a long discussion. Her situation sounded serious. First, I needed to meet with Ilana to see how she is doing. I instructed Ilana, take only your valuables with you and leave the house. There's a convenience store near your apartment, right? I will drive there and pick you up. Wait for me there. Sobbing, Ilana agreed. James and I hurried to the convenience store. When we arrived, Ilana was crouched in the parking lot. She saw me and said, Mom, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done this. She broke down and cried. I hugged Ilana, and together with James, we helped her into the car. She was terribly thin and almost gray in complexion. I was astonished, wondering what could have happened to her. I held Ilana until she stopped crying. James said to me, she will not be able to come down here. Let's take her home soon and give her a good rest. We need to talk to Ethan. I agreed with James, stating, yes, right now letting Ilana rest is our top priority. When we arrived home, Ilana, possibly due to exhaustion, immediately fell asleep on the sofa. After she woke up, I served her some easy-to-eat food. She ate voraciously in front of us, indicating how hungry she must have been. It was shocking to hear her stories about not being allowed to eat and having no money. I asked Ilana, what do you mean you're not allowed to eat? Ilana explained, my salary is lower than Ethan's, so Ethan and his mom Ivy keep telling me to save more. Gradually, my food portions were reduced. I asked, really? But you're making the food, right? Because you're a married couple, and you eat the same food, right? Ilana shook her head, saying no. For the past 6 months, Ivy has been cooking Ethan's meals. I'm not even allowed in the kitchen. James asked, Ellen, Ivy is in your house. This is the first time I'm hearing about this. Does this mean Ivy is staying there all the time? Ilana explained that Ivy had moved in with them about 6 months ago, and they started living together gradually, right around the time Ilana and I had lunch. Ivy had an argument with her husband and came to stay with Ian for just a week. But then Ethan got mad at his father and told Ivy she could stay indefinitely. I was shocked and glanced at James, who seemed to feel the same. Ilana continued, since then, Ivy has been criticizing my budgeting, saying it's all wrong and that I can't manage money at all. After Ivy criticized the budget, she took control of the household finances. Moreover, Ethan did not oppose Ivy at all and instead joined her in blaming me. Now Ivy is controlling Ethan's and my entire salary. Alana said, Ivy saw my pay slip and demanded I work more, including overtime. Ivy told me, your salary is much lower than Ethan's. Leave the housework to me and work more. How about doing more overtime? Ian also told Alana, yes, that's right. I agree with more overtime. It's nice to have my mom doing the housework. You're lucky, Alana. Ivy scrutinized Alana's pay slips, always looking for unnecessary expenses, and eventually found something else to criticize, the cafeteria deductions. Alana's company has a cafeteria, and lunch costs are deducted from her salary. Ivy told Alana, you're spending too much on lunch. I'll make you a lunchbox from now on. Stop eating at the cafeteria. Alana's attempts to argue were met with attacks from both Ivy and Ethan. Alana confided, whenever I try to speak up, Ivy and Ethan gang up on me. It never ends up being a calm discussion. Alana said something, but her words were suppressed by Ivy and Ethan. Now, Ethan and Ivy control all of Alana's salary, leaving her with almost no money of her own. When Alana wanted to go to the hair salon, Ivy called it extravagant and reluctantly gave her money. Ivy also complained about Alana's makeup being too expensive, telling her to buy cheaper products. Alana can't even buy new clothes, but Ivy never complains about Ethan's spending. Ethan seems to spend money lavishly. Alana told me the other day, Ethan bought a branded watch. He told me that because of his job, he would be treated like an idiot if he didn't wear something decent. Ethan has a reckless way of spending his money. Alana began to sob as she recalled these painful events. James and I listened in disbelief. Then, Alana's phone rang. She flinched and turned pale. I instinctively answered the phone for her. It was Ivy. So, isn't this Alana's phone? Why is Johnny answering? Ivy asked. I replied, hello, it's been a while. Alana is not feeling well. I can talk to you on her behalf. Ivy said, is that so? Well, all right. Could you tell Alana to come back home soon? I replied, unfortunately, I can't do that. Aylin is unwell. She'll stay here until she recovers. Ivy retorted, you're coddling her too much. As a mother, you should educate Ellen properly. She can't manage a budget or do household chores. It's always one problem after another. Struggling to find the right words, I remained silent. Then, Ivy changed the topic, asking, so, Alana will be commuting to work from your home? I replied, yes, considering her health, we'll need to discuss this with her company. But for now, she'll be commuting from here. Ivy then said, please tell Alana to return as soon as she's well. I responded, excuse me, Ivy, but I think it's necessary for us, including Ethan, to have a discussion about the future living arrangements. Ivy snorted and said, fine, we can talk any time, before hanging up. I couldn't understand why Ivy was so confident, but at least Alana was safe for now. We needed to focus on her health and feelings and plan our next steps. That night, after Alana went to sleep, James and I discussed the situation. The next day, Alana was examined at a hospital. As expected, she was underweight and not sleeping well. After talking with her, we decided she should take a leave of absence from work. She enjoyed my cooking, saying it was delicious. I asked her, what were you eating while living with Ian? What kind of meals did Ivy prepare for you? Alana said, my mother-in-law only cooks for Ethan and herself. I always had bread ends from a local bakery. They sell bread very cheaply. That's what I used to eat. I was shocked. Ellen had been deprived of proper meals, while Ivy and Ethan ate normally, just bread ends. Since 3 months ago, Ivy had stopped her from eating at the company cafeteria. My lunchbox was just bread ends in a container. I was embarrassed, so I ate secretly in the break room when no one was around, Alana said. Ivy would taunt her about not earning as much as Ethan, saying with her salary, bread ends were all she deserved. She had been living on just bread ends for 3 months. I was shocked, and James, who heard everything, couldn't hide his surprise. Tired from sharing, Ilana lay down to rest. James told me, "This is serious. We need to investigate further. If Ian or Ivy calls again, by some time, I'll gather more information." I told James, "Yes, I think this is going too far." Then James and I began looking into Ilana's circumstances. I started by calling her work colleague, who said, "Recently, Ilana has been doing a lot of overtime and looked pale. She often declined after-work drinks, saying she couldn't go because of her husband and mill." James also talked to Ilana's boss. Ilana's boss mentioned, "I've been concerned about Ilana lately because she's been doing too much overtime. She seemed desperate to work." Ilana's boss commented, "Ilana is so conscientious. Maybe she's been pushing herself too hard. I hope she recovers soon and comes back to us." Thanks to her boss's initiative, Ileana was granted sickness allowance by her company. The allowance was 2/3 of her salary, but we were grateful to receive it. We decided to have the sickness allowance paid into a different account from her usual salary account. 2 weeks after Ileana returned home, Ethan called. He insisted Ileana should be well by now. When I looked at James, he answered the phone. James humbly requested Ethan, "Ileana is not fully recovered yet. Please let her rest for another week." Ethan told James over the phone, "I guess there's no choice. Just 1 more week, okay?" and then hung up. I protested to James, saying she needs at least 3 more weeks to recover, and we don't know what they'll do to her if she goes back. James reassured me, "Don't worry, we won't stick to the 1-week timeline. They've treated her terribly, and we have a plan." He then asked Ileana, "What do you want to do? If you want to try again with Ethan, we won't stop you. But if you want to leave him, we'll support you." Ileana, suddenly resolute, said, "I've been thinking, am I really as useless as Ivy and Ethan say? But this isn't right. They're just taking my money. I don't want this anymore. I want a divorce." James encouraged her, saying, "That's right. You've chosen your path. We'll always be on your side." James shared the information he had gathered with us. We prepared for the possibility of Ethan coming over, ready to handle the situation. 1 week passed, and we didn't contact Ian. 9 days later, Ethan and Ivy came to visit. When the doorbell rang, I checked the intercom and informed Ileana and James. James suggested, "Let's talk to them directly and settle this." Ileana nodded in agreement. Opening the door, we found Ethan and Ivy glaring at us. Calming myself, I greeted them warmly. "Hello, what brings you here so suddenly?" Ethan demanded, "Why hasn't Ileana returned home? It's been a week. You did tell her, right?" Ivy also chimed in. "That's right. You can't do your chores, you can't do your laundry, and you can't even keep your promise to come home. What a mess you are. Parents and children are helpless." Inviting them in, I said, "Let's not talk in the doorway. Please come inside." Reluctantly, they entered. Ileana told them firmly, "I won't return to that house, Ethan. Please, let's divorce. I can't live with you anymore." Ethan threatened loudly, "You think you can just decide that?" But Ileana stood her ground, facing Ethan with resolve. Ivy then berated Ileana, saying, "For 6 months, I did all the housework and supported Ethan while you neglected your duties." Ileana countered, "It's not that I didn't do the chores. Whenever I did, you would criticize my methods and take over the tasks, didn't you?" Ivy retorted, "How dare you speak to me like that after making me work so hard? You should be ashamed." "I was only trying to correct your mistakes," Ethan joined in. "That's right, my mother helped because you couldn't handle the chores, allowing you to focus on work," he added. That's when James shouted at them, "What nonsense. You took Ilin's salary and fed her only bread ends. Your actions are the worst kind of abuse." They were shocked by James' outburst. James added, "Ethan, you have been fired from your company. I checked out your employment status. You don't have the power to continue paying the rent on that apartment anymore, do you?" Ethan began to look uneasy. Ileana added, I didn't know until Dad told me. James continued, I hired a detective to find out Ian. You were fired 6 months ago for an affair with your boss's wife. Ileana accused Ethan. You pushed me to work because you lost your job and income. Ethan turned pale and hung his head. James then confronted Ivy. You have a shopping addiction, and that's right. You didn't leave your home due to a fight, but because you were divorced and had nowhere to go. Ivy lost her composure and turned pale. James concluded, Ethan is being sued for alimony, and Ivy is being chased by debt collectors. They were trying to pass their debts onto Ileana. Ileana, trembling with anger, placed a piece of paper on the desk. She said, Once and for all, let's divorce. I've filled out half of the divorce form. You complete it and submit it to the authorities. We'll communicate through lawyers from now on. Ethan, prostrating at Ileana's feet on the carpet, pleaded, Please don't say we should divorce. It was just a moment of madness. I was wrong to hide it from you. You're all I have, Ilana. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Ivy, also appealing to Ileana, cried, I did all the housework and took care of everything, didn't I? I'm sorry, please come back. I'll keep doing the chores. Ileana, looking at Ethan and Ivy coldly, said, I'm fed up. Who would want to start over with you two? You hid what you did and exploited my salary. I don't want to see your faces. Ethan and Ivy were unable to move from their spot, crying inconsolably. James sternly told them, The conversation is over. It's time for you to leave. If you don't, we have our ways to deal with it. Reluctantly, Ethan and Ivy stood up and left our home defeated. Afterward, with a lawyer's help, Ileana and Ethan officially divorced. Of course, we filed for alimony from Ethan. In addition to hiding his affair, we also added the fact that Ethan did not provide adequate meals to Elena in the alimony claim. We had a doctor's diagnosis, which served as conclusive evidence against Ethan. Ethan had to move out of the apartment and live in a cheaper one with Ivy. Now he's working day and night to pay the alimony to Ileana, and Ivy, not working, has become the target of Ethan's anger, and they constantly fight. Our lawyer informed us about Ethan and Ivy's current situation. Ilan fully recovered and returned to work. Ileana seems to be enjoying her work more than ever. She apologized to me and James, saying, I'm sorry for being a burden and coming back home. Thank you for all your help with the divorce. I'll be staying here for a while. I hugged her, saying, Divorce doesn't matter. The fact that you're alive and well is all that matters to us. James added, Don't overdo it. You're a hard worker, and sometimes you keep things to yourself too much. Ileana admitted, I should have talked to you both sooner. I tried to handle too much on my own. Seeing Ileana's smile return was truly heartwarming, and James, who stood by us and fought against Ethan and Ivy, proved to be incredibly reliable. I fell for him all over again. When I told him, he joked, Then how about showing your gratitude with food? Make my favorite pork cutlets tonight as a family. We've overcome difficulties and will surely face more in the future, but with James and Ileana by my side, I want to support each other as a family. Mom, I can't continue living like this. Ethan and his mom barely let me eat. A sudden SOS call interrupted my distress. Ilana, come back home, I instinctively shouted. Ilana had become worryingly thin. I won't forgive Ethan and his mother, I resolved with determination. Let me introduce myself. I'm Jonna, a 50-year-old housewife. My husband James is 52 and works for a company. Our daughter is turning 26, having graduated from college and landed a job at a major corporation. She started living alone, and James and I were enjoying our life as a couple. Despite her success, Ilana was shy around men and hesitant in relationships. When she finally got a boyfriend, James and I were overjoyed. James kept urging her to bring him over, asking, What's he like? Bring him home sometime. I cautioned James, Honey, don't push her. She'll introduce him when she's ready. Let's wait patiently. Ilana soon smiled and said she'd bring Ethan over. Dad, you kept insisting, so I complained to Ethan. He agreed to come over to meet you, but don't say anything weird to him, okay? James was visibly delighted when Ethan came to greet us. James and I were nervous, but Ethan's friendly conversation soon eased our tension. Ethan introduced himself, saying, "Hello, I'm Ethan Smith, and I'm seriously dating Alana with the intention of marrying her." Alana blushed and said, "Marrying Ethan? You're embarrassing me. You said it was just a casual greeting." James happily told Alana, "No, it's great that he's thinking about the future. Ethan, I entrust Alana to you." Their relationship progressed smoothly with our blessing, and Ethan proposed formally 5 months later. Seeing a blushing but happy Alana made both James and me very happy. I heard Ethan worked for a major bank system company, and James and I discussed how their future seemed secure. As wedding preparations began, Alana frequently sought advice. One day, she asked, "Hey Mom, how much is the market price for a wedding ring?" "Ethan is planning to buy one for about $10,000. Surprised, I replied. "For wedding rings, maybe about $2,500 each for the couple. I've heard engagement rings are around $3,500. Alana seemed a bit uneasy. I felt the same way after asking around and reading magazines. Ethan's sense of money was odd. However, when Alana said, "Ethan insists it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing and wants me to have something nice," I conveniently interpreted it as Ethan wanting to give her a special gift. After some time, the two moved out of their bachelor's residence and into a condominium in New York. The area was very expensive but convenient for commuting. I expressed my concern to Alana, saying, "Hey Alana, the area you and Ian live in must be pretty expensive to rent, right? Are you going to be able to afford the monthly payments?" She reassured me, "Don't worry, Mom. Ian's working hard and earns a decent salary too. His job requires living near the bank. Ethan is a systems engineer at a bank-rated systems company. If there is a problem, Ethan needs to rush to the site even in the middle of the night. That's why the location had to be close to the bank, within a short taxi ride." Apparently, Alana explained, "Ethan's company gives a substantial housing allowance, so we're fine. Don't worry, Mom." Not fully understanding the system company's situation, I just accepted it as how things were. Months passed, and I invited Alana for lunch before her marriage. Alana and I often went for lunch together. However, after her marriage, when I invited her to join me, she often declined, citing being busy with work or having made other plans. James suggested that maybe she's just busy with her married life, but it didn't seem like Alana was avoiding me. Over the phone, Alana said, "Next Saturday." "Oh, that's when Ethan is on a business trip." "Sure, Mom, I can make it. I'll find a place for us." I was a bit thrilled to have lunch with my daughter after half a year. When I finally saw Alana, she looked a bit pale. Concerned, I said, "Alana, what's wrong? If you're not feeling well, take it easy. Just stay home and rest, okay?" Alana reassured me, "No, I'm fine. I've just been tired from MDI overtime lately. Plus, lunch with you might be just what I need to unwind." She managed a weak smile, and we enjoyed a good chat, just the two of us. About 2 hours in, Alana's phone rang. She looked shocked when she saw the display. Alana told me, "Mom, I have to go home already. Ethan's mother is calling." She explained that Ivy was at their place. Surprised, I said, "Sorry for keeping you during such a busy time." Alana reassured me, "It's okay. You can hurry back." Apologizing, Alana quickly left. Another half a year went by, and during this time, something terrible happened to Alana. I learned about it from a phone call from her. It was a sad day, and James and I were enjoying our day off. While I was making her tea, suddenly my phone rang. The display showed Alana. I quickly answered, and Alana hesitantly started, Mom, it's me." I." She seemed unable to continue, and sensing something was wrong, I asked, "What's the matter? Did something happen?" Alana remained silent for a while. Patiently, I waited for her to start talking. Eventually, she said, "Mom, I can't live like this anymore. Ethan and his mom barely let me eat. I might not survive if this continues. Shocked, I asked, "Are you okay? Sounds like things are really bad. Why don't you come back home?" Elena seemed undecided. I firmly told her, "If you're feeling unwell, you can just sit around idly. Come back home. We'll talk it over when you get here." Elena responded, "Really? Can I come back? But I don't have any money. I can't leave." I thought this was strange. Elena was earning a decent salary. But there was no time for a long discussion. Her situation sounded serious. First, I needed to meet with Elena to see how she is doing. I instructed Elena, "Take only your valuables with you and leave the house. There's a convenience store near your apartment, right? I will drive there and pick you up. Wait for me there." Sobbing, Elena agreed. James and I hurried to the convenience store. When we arrived, Elena was crouched in the parking lot. She saw me and said, Mom, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done this." She broke down and cried. I hugged Elena, and together with James, we helped her into the car. She was terribly thin and almost gray in complexion. I was astonished, wondering what could have happened to her. I held Elena until she stopped crying. James said to me, "She will not be able to come down here. Let's take her home soon and give her a good rest. We need to talk to Ethan." I agreed with James, stating, "Yes, right now letting Elena rest is our top priority." When we arrived home, Elena, possibly due to exhaustion, immediately fell asleep on the sofa. After she woke up, I served her some easy-to-eat food. She ate voraciously in front of us, indicating how hungry she must have been. It was shocking to hear her stories about not being allowed to eat and having no money. I asked Elena, "What do you mean you're not allowed to eat?" Elena explained, "My salary is lower than Ethan's, so Ethan and his mom Ivy keep telling me to save more." Gradually, my food portions were reduced. I asked, "Really? But you're making the food, right? Because you're a married couple, and you eat the same food, right?" Elena shook her head, saying, "No. For the past 6 months, Ivy has been cooking Ethan's meals. I'm not even allowed in the kitchen." James asked, "Ellen, Ivy is in your house. This is the first time I'm hearing about this. Does this mean Ivy is staying there all the time?" Elena explained that Ivy had moved in with them about 6 months ago, and they started living together gradually, right around the time Elena and I had lunch. Ivy had an argument with her husband and came to stay with Ian for just a week. But then Ethan got mad at his father and told Ivy she could stay indefinitely. I was shocked and glanced at James, who seemed to feel the same. Elena continued, "Since then, Ivy has been criticizing my budgeting, saying it's all wrong and that I can't manage money at all." After Ivy criticized the budget, she took control of the household finances. Moreover, Ethan did not oppose Ivy at all and instead joined her in blaming me. Now Ivy is controlling Ethan's and my entire salary. Elena said, "Ivy saw my pay slip and demanded I work more, including overtime. Ivy told me, 'Your salary is much lower than Ethan's. Leave the housework to me and work more. How about doing more overtime?' Ian also told Elena, 'Yes, that's right. I agree with more overtime. It's nice to have my mom doing the housework. You're lucky, Elena." Ivy scrutinized Elena's pay slips, always looking for unnecessary expenses, and eventually found something else to criticize: the cafeteria deductions. Elena's company has a cafeteria, and lunch costs are deducted from her salary. Ivy told Elena, "You're spending too much on lunch. I'll make you a lunchbox from now on. Stop eating at the cafeteria." Elena's attempts to argue were met with attacks from both Ivy and Ethan. Elena confided, "Whenever I try to speak up, Ivy and Ethan gang up on me. It never ends up being a calm discussion." Elena said something, but her words were suppressed by Ivy and Ethan. Now, Ethan and Ivy control all of Elena's salary, leaving her with almost no money of her own. When Elena wanted to go to the hair salon, Ivy called it extravagant and reluctantly gave her money. Ivy also complained about Elena's makeup being too expensive, telling her to buy cheaper products. Ilana can't even buy new clothes, but Ivy never complains about Ethan's spending. Ethan seems to spend money lavishly. Ilana told me the other day, Ethan bought a branded watch. He told me that because of his job, he would be treated like an idiot if he didn't wear something decent. Ethan has a reckless way of spending his money. Ilana began to sob as she recalled these painful events. James and I listened in disbelief. Then, Ilana's phone rang. She flinched and turned pale. I instinctively answered the phone for her. It was Ivy. So, isn't this Ilana's phone? Why is Johnny answering? Ivy asked. I replied, hello, it's been a while. Ilana is not feeling well. I can talk to you on her behalf. Ivy said, is that so? Well, all right. Could you tell Ilana to come back home soon? I replied, unfortunately, I can't do that. Aylin is unwell. She'll stay here until she recovers. Ivy retorted, you're coddling her too much. As a mother, you should educate Ellen properly. She can't manage a budget or do household chores. It's always one problem after another. Struggling to find the right words, I remained silent. Then, Ivy changed the topic, asking, so, Ilana will be commuting to work from your home? I replied, yes, considering her health, we'll need to discuss this with her company. But for now, she'll be commuting from here. Ivy then said, please tell Ilana to return as soon as she's well. I responded, excuse me, Ivy, but I think it's necessary for us, including Ethan, to have a discussion about the future living arrangements. Ivy snorted and said, fine, we can talk anytime, before hanging up. I couldn't understand why Ivy was so confident, but at least Ilana was safe for now. We needed to focus on her health and feelings and plan our next steps. That night, after Ilana went to sleep, James and I discussed the situation. The next day, Ilana was examined at a hospital. As expected, she was underweight and not sleeping well. After talking with her, we decided she should take a leave of absence from work. She enjoyed my cooking, saying it was delicious. I asked her, what were you eating while living with Ian? What kind of meals did Ivy prepare for you? Ilana said, my mother-in-law only cooks for Ethan and herself. I always had bread ends from a local bakery. They sell bread very cheaply. That's what I used to eat. I was shocked. Ellen had been deprived of proper meals, while Ivy and Ethan ate normally, just bread ends. Since 3 months ago, Ivy had stopped her from eating at the company cafeteria. My lunchbox was just bread ends in a container. I was embarrassed, so I ate secretly in the break room when no one was around, Ilana said. Ivy would taunt her about not earning as much as Ethan, saying with her salary, bread ends were all she deserved. She had been living on just bread ends for 3 months. I was shocked, and James, who heard everything, couldn't hide his surprise. Tired from sharing, Ilana lay down to rest. James told me, this is serious. We need to investigate further. If Ian or Ivy calls again, by some time, I'll gather more information. I told James, yes, I think this is going too far. Then James and I began looking into Ilana's circumstances. I started by calling her work colleague, who said, recently, Ilana has been doing a lot of overtime and looked pale. She often declined after-work drinks, saying she couldn't go because of her husband and mill. James also talked to Ilana's boss. Ilana's boss mentioned, I've been concerned about Ilana lately because she's been doing too much overtime. She seemed desperate to work. Ilana's boss commented, Aylin is so conscientious. Maybe she's been pushing herself too hard. I hope she recovers soon and comes back to us. Thanks to her boss's initiative, Ileana was granted sickness allowance by her company. The allowance was 2/3 of her salary. But we were grateful to receive it. We decided to have the sickness allowance paid into a different account from her usual salary account. 2 weeks after Ileana returned home, Ethan called. He insisted Ileana should be well by now. When I looked at James, he answered the phone. James humbly requested Ethan, Ileana is not fully recovered yet. Please let her rest for another week. Ethan told James over the phone. I guess there's no choice. Just one more week, okay? And then hung up. I protested to James, saying she needs at least 3 more weeks to recover, and we don't know what they'll do to her if she goes back. James reassured me, don't worry, we won't stick to the 1-week timeline. They've treated her terribly, and we have a plan. He then asked Ileana, what do you want to do? If you want to try again with Ethan, we won't stop you. But if you want to leave him, we'll support you. Ileana, suddenly resolute, said, I've been thinking. Am I really as useless as Ivy and Ethan say? But this isn't right. They're just taking my money. I don't want this anymore. I want a divorce. James encouraged her, saying, that's right. You've chosen your path. We'll always be on your side. James shared the information he had gathered with us. We prepared for the possibility of Ethan coming over, ready to handle the situation. 1 week passed, and we didn't contact Ian. 9 days later, Ethan and Ivy came to visit. When the doorbell rang, I checked the intercom and informed Ileana and James. James suggested, let's talk to them directly and settle this. Ileana nodded in agreement. Opening the door, we found Ethan and Ivy glaring at us. Calming myself, I greeted them warmly. Hello, what brings you here so suddenly? Ethan demanded. Why hasn't Ileana returned home? It's been a week. You did tell her, right? Ivy also chimed in. That's right. You can't do your chores, you can't do your laundry, and you can't even keep your promise to come home. What a mess you are. Parents and children are helpless. Inviting them in, I said, let's not talk in the doorway. Please come inside. Reluctantly, they entered. Ileana told them firmly, I won't return to that house, Ethan. Please, let's divorce. I can't live with you anymore. Ethan threatened loudly. You think you can just decide that? But Ileana stood her ground, facing Ethan with resolve. Ivy then berated Ileana, saying, for 6 months, I did all the housework and supported Ethan while you neglected your duties. Ileana countered, it's not that I didn't do the chores. Whenever I did, you would criticize my methods and take over the tasks, didn't you? Ivy retorted, how dare you speak to me like that after making me work so hard? You should be ashamed. I was only trying to correct your mistakes, Ethan joined in. That's right, my mother helped because you couldn't handle the chores, allowing you to focus on work, he added. That's when James shouted at them, what nonsense. You took Eileen's salary and fed her only bread ends. Your actions are the worst kind of abuse. They were shocked by James' outburst. James added, Ethan, you have been fired from your company. I checked out your employment status. You don't have the power to continue paying the rent on that apartment anymore, do you? Ethan began to look uneasy. Ileana added, I didn't know until Dad told me. James continued, I hired a detective to find out Ian. You were fired 6 months ago for an affair with your boss's wife. Ileana accused Ethan, you pushed me to work because you lost your job and income. Ethan turned pale and hung his head. James then confronted Ivy. You have a shopping addiction, and that's right, you didn't leave your home due to a fight, but because you were divorced and had nowhere to go. Ivy lost her composure and turned pale. James concluded, Ethan is being sued for alimony, and Ivy is being chased by debt collectors. They were trying to pass their debts onto Ileana. Ileana, trembling with anger, placed a piece of paper on the desk. She said, once and for all, let's divorce. I filled out half of the divorce form. You complete it and submit it to the authorities. We'll communicate through lawyers from now on. Ethan, prostrating at Ileana's feet on the carpet, pleaded, please don't say we should divorce. It was just a moment of madness. I was wrong to hide it from you. You're all I have, Ilana. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Ivy, also appealing to Ileana, cried, I did all the housework and took care of everything, didn't I? I'm sorry, please come back. I'll keep doing the chores. Ileana, looking at Ethan and Ivy coldly, said, I'm fed up. Who would want to start over with you two? You hid what you did and exploited my salary. I don't want to see your faces. Ethan and Ivy were unable to move from their spot, crying inconsolably. James sternly told them, "The conversation is over. It's time for you to leave. If you don't, we have our ways to deal with it." Reluctantly, Ethan and Ivy stood up and left our home defeated. Afterward, with a lawyer's help, Ileana and Ethan officially divorced. Of course, we filed for alimony from Ethan. In addition to hiding his affair, we also added the fact that Ethan did not provide adequate meals to Elena in the alimony claim. We had a doctor's diagnosis, which served as conclusive evidence against Ethan. Ethan had to move out of the apartment and live in a cheaper one with Ivy. Now he's working day and night to pay the alimony to Ileana, and Ivy, not working, has become the target of Ethan's anger, and they constantly fight. Our lawyer informed us about Ethan and Ivy's current situation. Ilan fully recovered and returned to work. Ileana seems to be enjoying her work more than ever. She apologized to me and James, saying, "I'm sorry for being a burden and coming back home. Thank you for all your help with the divorce. I'll be staying here for a while." I hugged her, saying, "Divorce doesn't matter. The fact that you're alive and well is all that matters to us." James added, "Don't overdo it. You're a hard worker, and sometimes you keep things to yourself too much." Ileana admitted, "I should have talked to you both sooner. I tried to handle too much on my own." Seeing Ileana's smile return was truly heartwarming, and James, who stood by us and fought against Ethan and Ivy, proved to be incredibly reliable. I fell for him all over again. When I told him, he joked, "Then how about showing your gratitude with food? Make my favorite pork cutlets tonight as a family." We've overcome difficulties and will surely face more in the future, but with James and Ileana by my side, I want to support each other as a family.